Chapter 3984. With Nan Tianba's protective nature, if he could confirm that Kong Mingming was Lin heir, then he would not hesitate to kill Kong Mingming to avenge his third brother, Nan Tianyong. However, it was only a suspicion, and there was no concrete evidence. This matter was not easy to deal with. One had to know that the agreement between them and Su Lingchong was not made by the few of them alone. The fact that the two sides were able to shake hands and make peace was the result of the mutual compromise between the powers behind them. If they acted rashly, not only would they offend the other party, even the powers behind them would be dissatisfied. They would offend both inside and outside. No matter how hot Nan Tianba's temper was, he would not do such a stupid thing. Hearing this, Nan Tianba could only remain silent. He was currently at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm, and the temptation of the star ink stone was greater than anyone else's. However, he was currently in a situation where he could not act even though he had his suspicions. As he spoke, Nan Tianba had already led the way. The direction he was heading towards was where Ram Jia and Lin Yi were. Hallmaster Ram, long time no see. Walking forward, Nan Tianba took the initiative to greet Lin Yi. As for an insignificant person like Lin Yi, he was completely ignored. Ram Jia raised his eyelids and glanced at him. About the proposal from last time, have you thought about it? This matter. I still need to think about it carefully. Nan Tianba hesitated for a moment and glanced at Lin Yi, as if there was a secret that couldn't be revealed to outsiders. He immediately said in a harsh tone, "Who do you think you are? How dare you sit here and disturb the conversation between Hallmaster Ram and me? Hurry up and scram." Lin Yi immediately furrowed his eyebrows. Although Nan Tianba was strong, compared to Ram Jia, there was still a huge gap. Even Ram Jia wasn't this arrogant, so who did Nan Tianba think he was? "I'm sorry, I don't have the habit of giving way to others. If you want to talk with Hallmaster Ram, why don't you consider changing the location?" Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said calmly. "Brat, what did you say?" Nan Tianba's temper immediately flared up. As for Ram Jia, he was still lazily reclining on his chair, looking as if he had nothing to do with this matter. "I'm not interested in repeating myself. If Your Excellency has a problem with your ears, I suggest that you find a doctor. You might be able to cure it." Lin Yi was still indifferent. No matter how strong the other party was, as long as the other party provoked him, Lin Yi never knew how to retreat. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the courageous will win. A coward would never be able to stand at the pinnacle of experts. "You are courting death." These words were completely squeezed out from the gaps between Nan Tianba's teeth. He never thought that he would be provoked by such a weak ant in front of everyone. Lin Yi's strength in the middle stage of Foundation establishment couldn't be hidden from his eyes. In front of an aloof gold core stage expert like him, Lin Yi could only be regarded as a weakling. As his voice fell, Nan Tianba's ferocious aura suddenly rose to the extreme, causing the audience to cry out in alarm. A gold core stage expert was no small matter. However, what was even more surprising was that there was still someone who dared to make a move on such an occasion. "This is Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet. Before Your Excellency makes a move, it's best to think about the consequences first," Lin Yi calmly said. If the other party was Ram Jia, perhaps it was really possible for him to make a move here without any scruples. However, if it was someone else, even if it was a fierce character like Nan Tianba, they might not have the guts to do so. Making a move here. It was equivalent to smashing Shangwan Laner's place. Even more so, it was equivalent to smashing Shangwan Tianhua's place. Not just anyone could have this kind of confidence. In front of a super big shot like Shangwan Tianhua, a gold core stage expert was just an ant. Moreover, intuition told Lin Yi that Nan Tianba wasn't as hot-tempered and brainless as he looked on the surface. He wouldn't do something so stupid as to put himself in danger just to teach a small character like him a lesson. Sure enough, Nan Tianba's aura suddenly stagnated. He coldly looked down at Lin Yi and said, "Brat, you have guts. What's your name?" Without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Southern Sky Gate and Yusha had already moved forward and whispered a few words into his ear. Not only did they know Lin Yi's identity and name, they even told Lin Yi their previous test. To be honest, seeing Lin Yi in a place like this, especially when Lin Yi was sitting so openly in front of Ram Jia, Southern Sky Gate and Yusha couldn't react at all. Even if they recognized him at first glance, they still couldn't believe it. It wasn't until now that they could finally confirm that this guy was the newcomer from Blue Cloud Pavilion that they had suspected before. What kind of world is this? Even a mere newcomer from Blue Cloud Pavilion can sneak into this place. Or could it be that you simply took advantage of the fact that the guards were lax to sneak in? Nan Tianba sneered as he listened to the whole story. I heard that for Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet this time, half of the guards are elites transferred from the Hall of Law Enforcement at the last minute. You're insulting their abilities in front of the Hall Master, isn't that appropriate? Lin Yi's face was as calm as ever. Nan Tianba's expression couldn't help but change. After hearing Lin Yi's words, he felt like he was indirectly scolding the locust tree. At this moment, Yuzhe, who was behind them, suddenly spoke up. Eldest martial uncle, second martial uncle, disciple's master died mysteriously. This Lin Yi is one of the suspects. Martial uncles, please help disciple find out the truth and let master's soul rest in peace. His sudden interruption was naturally to give Nan Tianba a way out. At the same time, it also didn't dispel their suspicions towards Lin Yi. Although their focus was currently on Kong Mingming, they didn't dare to act rashly because of Su Lingchong. Now that Lin Yi, the second suspect, had bumped into the muzzle, they obviously couldn't let go of this opportunity. Unknowingly, Yuzhe had always felt that Lin Yi's temperament was very similar to Lin Er's. As a cultivator, his strong intuition was very accurate most of the time. As soon as these words came out, Nan Tianba's eyes suddenly lit up. He secretly gave Yuzhe a look of praise and immediately said righteously, when third brother Nan Tianyong died, the higher-ups of the three great pavilions clearly stated that they would investigate this matter. However, there hasn't been any progress. Taking advantage of today's opportunity, Hall Master Gong Yang might as well investigate this Lin Yi. With your ability, if you want to find out anything, it should be very simple. Chapter 3985. However, for Lin Yi, once the soul-searching technique was used, it would be equivalent to a disaster. No one could save him in this situation, not even Shanghai Laner. Although Shanghai Laner was a young miss, once it involved the powerful people present, her words might not be that effective, unless her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, personally came forward. However, as the dignified pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, how could Shanghai Tianhua stand up for Lin Yi, a nobody from Blue Cloud Pavilion? If it really didn't work, they could only try to create chaos and escape. Compared to being discovered by the soul-searching technique, this would give them a slim chance of survival. At this moment, a familiar girl's voice suddenly sounded from behind them. Lin Yi is this lady's savior, who dares to use the soul-searching technique on him. Following the appearance of the person, everyone's eyes instantly focused on her. Even a legendary figure like Ram Jia was only slightly inferior. The person who came was the main character of this birthday banquet, Shanghai Laner. Lin Yi's heart immediately relaxed. As long as the soul-searching technique was not used, Shanghai Laner came forward to help him, so it would still be effective. Even if Nan Tianba and the others wanted to punish him, they probably wouldn't dare to go against the will of this young miss on this day. However, the reaction of Nan Tianba and the others was beyond Lin Yi's expectations. Young Miss Shangwan, even if this Lin Yi is your savior, he could also be the real murderer who killed this seat's third brother. There is no conflict between the two. Pavilion Master Shangwan had personally ordered for this matter to be investigated. Does young miss want to let your grandfather's order become empty words? Nan Tianba said forcefully. After joining hands with Su Yuanjing, who was behind Su Lingchong, their side was already very clear. Since the background had nothing to do with Shanghai Tianhua, then there was naturally no need to care too much about a little girl like Shanghai Laner. This. Lin Yi. In a hurry, Shanghai Laner didn't know what to say. Shanghai Laner could only helplessly look at Lin Yi. She wanted to help Lin Yi out of this predicament, but this place was not like the ordinary law enforcers she had faced in the law enforcement hall last time. Instead, it was Nan Tianba, who had an extraordinary status. If he could not stand on his feet, then even she, the eldest daughter of the Shangwan family, would be helpless. Although she sometimes behaved like a willful and ignorant little girl, when it came to important matters related to her grandfather, Shangwan Tianhua, she would never take it lightly. At this time, if she said something wrong, it could be used as a pretext by others, which would affect her grandfather's image and status. This kind of thing had happened a lot in the past. Lin Yi gently shook his head at Shanghai Laner. He signaled her not to say too much. After all, she was still a little girl. At this time, the more she said, the more mistakes she would make. Instead of being bullied by the other side, it was better to wait and see. Seeing that Shanghai Laner was choked by his words, Nan Tianba and the others couldn't help but look at each other with a smile. Then, he said to Ram Jia, Hall Master Ram, you are the #1 person in charge of the 3 Great Pavilions punishment. Right now, the real suspect, Lin Yi, is right in front of you. If you just ignore him like this, I feel that it is quite inappropriate. What do you say? With just a few words, the situation was completely under Nan Tianba's control. It could be seen that this guy was not as rough as he looked on the surface, and that fiery and brainless. Lin Yi could only secretly be on guard. Things had suddenly developed to this point, and even if Shanghai Laner personally came forward, she still wouldn't be able to help him out of this predicament. It was really a bit difficult to get off the tiger. Right now, he could only take one step at a time. However, at this time, Ram Jia glanced at Nan Tianba. He said indifferently, Nan Tianba, when did it become your turn to teach me what I need to do? With just one simple sentence, Nan Tianba and the others, who were originally complacent, suddenly had their faces collapse. They were so numb that they were confused by this arrogant brat that they forgot that Ram Jia wasn't someone they could casually order around. If they really pointed fingers at Ram Jia and violated Ram Jia's taboo, Lin Yi would probably be fine. Instead, they would be the ones facing a disaster. Moreover, the reason why Nan Tianba's case didn't make any progress at all was actually the result of Ram Jia's incitement. He felt that this case wasn't important, so no one would investigate it. Naturally, there wouldn't be any results. Therefore, when Nan Tianba's words fell into Ram Jia's ears, it was the same as reprimanding him for not doing his job. With Ram Jia's arrogance, it would be strange if he nodded his head. No. Nan Tianba hurriedly tried to explain. However, before he could explain, Ram Jia suddenly stood up without any warning. An incomparably majestic and overbearing aura instantly pressed down on top of his head. Nan Tianba was caught off guard. His knees went soft and he almost knelt down in front of everyone. He forcefully clenched his teeth and supported his body. However, Southern Sky Gate and Yu Zhi, who were behind him, didn't have this kind of strength. With a pudong sound, their knees hit the floor and they spat out blood. No. Is it your fault, or is it my fault? Ram Jia coldly glanced at him, then said meaningfully, this is just a small warning for you. I don't have that much patience, and I'm too lazy to care about this bullshit. As for the question I asked you before, give me an answer within 3 days. Otherwise, you should be very clear about the consequences. After saying this, Ram Jia stood up and left, leaving the crowd with an unruly and domineering back. This person was truly extraordinary. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but admire him. To be honest, a man as tyrannical and arrogant as Ram Jia was rarely seen in this world. However, what made Lin Yi even more curious was the matter between Ram Jia and Nan Tianba. In such a short period of time, it seemed like this was the second time he had mentioned it. This time you've kicked an iron plate on the cold-faced ghost. Serves you right. Shanghai Laner rejoiced in their misfortune. As for the little curly bear that came along with her and was currently hanging on Lin Yi's neck, it swaggered its claws at Nan Tianba and the others. Nan Tianba's face turned ashen from anger, but he couldn't do anything. He could only let out a cold snort and silently pulled Southern Sky Gate and Yuzhou up from the ground. After all, this was Shengwan Laner's birthday banquet. Because he was the one in the right, he couldn't be blamed for not giving this missy any face. However, if he dared to throw a tantrum now, it would be too much. If this matter were to fall into Shengwan Tianhua's ears, he would definitely suffer the consequences. Chapter 3986. Lin Yi took a deep look at Nan Tianba and the others, then turned around and followed Shanghai Laner. Although these people were intimidated by Ram Jia, if he continued to stay here, these people might take the risk out of desperation. Nan Tianba had once told Lin Yi that he also knew the soul-searching technique. Although his realm wasn't as high as Ram Jia's, even if it was the most basic soul-searching technique, he still had to be careful. Before he had enough strength, Lin Yi felt that it was better to have less contact with these people. Watching Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner leave, Nan Tianba's eyes couldn't help but spit fire. To be honest, they didn't really suspect Lin Yi. It was just that Nan Tianba didn't like Lin Yi, so he used it as a pretext to make a fuss. After all, they had tried to investigate Lin Yi several times before, but to no avail. Therefore, even if Lin Yi still had flaws, their thinking had inevitably fallen into the wrong zone. Especially when Lin Yi pushed the boat with the current and shifted the biggest suspicion onto Kong Mingming. At least before they investigated Kong Mingming, they wouldn't turn around and suspect Lin Yi. This time, it could only be said that Lin Yi's luck wasn't good. Sitting together with a prominent person like Ram Jia had inexplicably provoked Nan Tianba's dissatisfaction, which was why he encountered this unexpected crisis. Following Shanghai Laner, they went to the 3rd floor. This was the lounge that Hua Yang restaurant had prepared for this young miss. Aside from the outside being heavily guarded, there weren't any unnecessary people in the room. For Lin Yi, this could save him a lot of unnecessary trouble. After asking Lin Yi to sit down, Shengwan Lan reminded him seriously, "Little junior brother, that ugly black-faced guy just now, although he can't be compared with a pervert like Cold-Face Ghost, he is still very powerful. Don't underestimate him. My grandfather once privately commented on the new generation of the 3 pavilions, and this guy is ranked in the top 10 troublesome people. So, little disciple, if you meet this person in the future, it's better to stay away. Top 10 of the new generation of the 3 pavilions. Thank you for the reminder, little disciple sister. I'll remember it." Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. When mentioning the new generation of the 3 pavilions, the first person that came to mind would be the head of the law enforcement hall, Ram Jia. Anyone else in front of him would pale in comparison. But this didn't mean that the other new generation masters weren't strong. Gong Yangjie was a rare exception. His target was a legend like Zhang Liju, and the other new generation masters were nothing to scoff at. As for the other new generation of the 3 pavilions, they were still the future pillars of the 3 pavilions. Whether it was status or strength, no ordinary person could shake them. Shengguan Tianhua was the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Even if it was a private evaluation that was never made public, its credibility and authenticity were not inferior to the authority of the three great pavilions. For Nan Tianba to be able to be ranked in the top 10, it could be seen that he was not a simple character. At least up until now, Lin Yi was just an ant that couldn't even be stepped on. If he wanted to have the strength to deal with a threat like this, then he would need to do so. You're still a newcomer. There's still a long way to go. But little disciple brother, you don't have to be too afraid. You're still a newcomer. Unless you meet that ugly big black-faced monster alone outside, he won't dare to come looking for trouble. Shanghai Laner comforted him with a smile. The protection of the new generation of the three pavilions wasn't just for show. Although in terms of influence and power, the Welcome Pavilion was ranked last among the big pavilions. As long as they stayed within the territory of the Welcome Pavilion, no one would dare to touch these newcomers. Even Nan Tianba was no exception. Unless he wanted to be wanted by the Elders Guild. Yes, I know. Lin Yi nodded, but didn't comment on this. Normally, as a newcomer, as long as he stayed in the Welcome Pavilion, he would be able to sleep peacefully. But this was on the premise that no one would be able to find a loophole. Otherwise, people would always be able to find a loophole. To forge iron, one had to be strong. In the end, only when one's own strength was truly strong would they be able to sleep peacefully. Of course, there was no need to explain these concerns to Shanghai Laner. Lin Yi immediately took out an exquisite spirit jade box from his bosom. This was what he had carefully selected at the Hong Chamber of Commerce last time. He handed it to Shanghai Laner and said, "Little senior sister, this is a small token of my appreciation. I wish you a happy birthday." Wow, what a beautiful box. Shanghai Laner's eyes lit up. She was pleasantly surprised and said, "This is the texture of high-grade spirit jades. The carving technique is also very good. It should be a master-level craftsmanship. Senior sister, I wanted such a treasure box." "Thank you, little junior brother, I like it very much." Seeing Shanghai Laner's fondness for the box, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. This spirit jade box had indeed cost him a lot of spirit jades, but how could his gift be just a box? The spirit jade box was just a foil. What was inside was the real gift. "Little senior sister, why don't you open it and take a look?" Lin Yi smiled and pointed at the box. Shanghai Laner was slightly stunned. In her opinion, with Lin Yi's qualifications as a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was already very rare and very thoughtful for him to give her such an exquisite spirit jade box. She was quite touched. However, from what Lin Yi said, could it be that there was something else inside? Shanghai Laner adjusted her breathing. With the mood of witnessing the surprise, she wanted to slowly open the spirit jade box. However, she didn't expect that before she could open it, the little curly bear next to her had already snatched the spirit jade box from her hand. Shanghai Laner suddenly let out a soft cry and hurriedly wanted to snatch it back. At this moment, Su Lingchong happened to walk to the door of the room and happened to hear Shanghai Laner's soft cry. He hurriedly kicked the door open and said anxiously, "Little junior sister, what's wrong?" Only then did Shanghai Laner recover from her shock. She couldn't be bothered to chase after the little curly bear anymore. She covered her mouth and stuck out her tongue. Pretending to be calm, she said, "What's wrong?" "There's nothing wrong here. Senior brother Su, don't you think it's improper for you to barge into this lady's room?" Su Lingchong suspiciously looked at the two of them. He had just heard the servant say that Shanghai Laner had personally brought Lin Yi up to the 3rd floor. A man and a woman were alone in a room. He was afraid that there would be some scandal, so he hurriedly chased after them. In the end, he saw the situation in front of him. Lin Yi didn't seem to be abnormal. He still had a calm and pretentious demeanor. However, Shanghai Laner, this young lady, was somewhat abnormal. Chapter 3987. All of this was truly too easy to cause one's imagination to run wild. Especially since Su Lingchong's first impression was that this kid, Lin Yi, had always wanted to be a toad that wanted to eat swan meat, and it was rare for him to have a chance to be alone in a room with Shangguan Laner. Could it be that this beast would easily let it go? In Su Lingchong's mind, the scene from earlier was quickly restored to another scene as a matter of course, and that was Lin Yi, this bastard, taking advantage of the fact that Shangguan Laner wasn't paying attention and had secretly kissed Shangguan Laner forcefully. When he thought up to here, Su Lingchong instantly felt inconsolable. Motherfucker. I've chased after this little girl for so many years, yet I haven't even been able to hold her hand once. In the end, I actually allowed Lin Yi, this grassroot that's pretending to be pretentious, to seize the initiative. This sort of thing is intolerable. Shangguan Laner had always been Su Lingchong's woman, and it was related to his great cause in the future. No one was allowed to encroach upon her, and if anyone dared to touch even a strand of hair on her, then it would be an irreconcilable enmity with him, young Master Su. So, when he'd just noticed a tiny sign earlier, Su Lingchong had thought of ways to destroy the relationship between Shangguan Laner and Lin Yi, and he wanted to nip this practically impossible possibility in the bud. He originally thought that he could already sit back and relax, yet he never imagined that such a thing would actually occur right under his eyes. Even though he and Shanghai Laner hadn't established any status yet, under the tacit consent of the parents of both parties, Su Lingchong had long since taken Shanghai Laner to be his woman. Presently, in this sort of situation, was it any different from being made a cuckold by Lin Yi? Lin Yi, this young master will make living worse than death for you. Instantly, Su Lingchong was actually stimulated by his own guess to the point of losing control of his emotions, and his eyes were completely red as he wanted to make a move against Lin Yi. In fact, he had not completely lost his mind. As long as he revealed the fact that Lin Yi had violated and molested Shangguan Laner, even if he were to crush Lin Yi's bones and scatter his ashes on the spot, he would not need to take any responsibility. Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't have the time to think about why this guy suddenly went berserk. He quickly pulled Shanghai Laner and wanted to retreat. After all, his opponent was a well-established expert in the great perfection of the building foundation stage, and Lin Yi himself was only in the middle stage of the building foundation stage. If he did not use his trump card, the super true chi bomb, he would certainly be overwhelmed if he fought the opponent recklessly. However, Shangguan Lan was one step ahead of him. She stood in front of him and shouted at Su Lingchong, "What do you want to do? Little junior brother is my important guest. If you dare to attack him, I will kill him. If you dare to make a move against him, I'll go tell Grandpa." Su Lingchong's figure paused, and he looked past Shanghai Laner to look at Lin Yi. Immediately after, his gaze became even more sinister, and he said half mockingly and half mockingly, "Junior sister Lan, if he is your important guest, then what am I?" Unexpectedly, Shanghai Laner's big missy temper flared up, and she didn't give him the slightest bit of face as she said, "What does the matter between this young lady and junior brother have to do with you? Do I need to explain it to an outsider like you?" Hearing this, Su Lingchong couldn't help but laugh out of extreme anger, and he nervously pointed at Lin Yi, then pointed at himself. He sneered and said, "I'm an outsider, and you and this grassroots slut are on the same side." "Good, very good, well said. Who are you calling a grassroots slut? I'll give you a chance. Quickly apologize to my junior brother." Shanghai Laner was instantly enraged as well. She didn't have many friends in the first place, and after experiencing all sorts of things before. In her heart, Lin Yi's position was already far from what an ordinary friend could compare to, and as for a hateful person like Su Lingchong, he couldn't even be considered as a friend in her eyes. Her standpoint could be said to be clear at a glance. Unexpectedly, Su Lingchong suddenly changed his expression into a cold and indifferent one, and he said coldly, "All the important figures downstairs have already arrived. Junior Sister Lon, if you have nothing to do with this grassroots slut, then you should go down as soon as possible. Don't let so many important figures wait for too long." Looking at Su Lingchong's back figure that turned around and left, Shanghai Laner's beautiful face instantly flushed red with anger. Previously, she cooperated with Lin Yi's act and said that she hated Lin Yi, but that hateful person like Su Lingchong actually dared to insult Lin Yi in front of her, and that was unforgivable. But unfortunately, the other party was after all one of the few young masters in the Soaring Sky Pavilion, and now he was even the senior brother in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Even she, the eldest miss of the Shengguan family, couldn't do anything to Su Lingchong, and it wasn't easy to help Lin Yi vent his anger. "Junior sister, I'm sorry, I've caused trouble for you," Lin Yi said with a sigh behind her. "How could it be? Junior brother, don't think too much. Your senior sister, originally wanted to fall out with this hateful person, but because of my grandfather's feelings, I didn't say it out loud. Today is also good, so that he won't come and bother me for no reason in the future." Shanghai Laner quickly explained and comforted him. Lin Yi secretly shook his head. Su Lingchong didn't seem like a person who would give up so easily. For a young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion like him, the attraction of Shanghai Laner to him was definitely not as simple as a woman's beauty. Even if Shanghai Laner openly fell out with him, he wouldn't just let go. To be precise, the family force behind him wouldn't allow him to just let go like this. In this kind of situation, if Su Lingchong continued to lose control of his emotions and went berserk, perhaps it would be easier to deal with him. After all, the surroundings were heavily guarded. If this guy was only coming for him, Lin Yi believed that he would be able to hold on until the guards came to rescue him. At that time, it wouldn't be easy for Su Lingchong to clean up the mess. On the contrary, looking at the current situation, Su Lingchong seemed to have lost control of his emotions, but in the end, he quickly regained his composure. This was even more terrifying, and it was enough to prove that this young Master Su's shrewdness was far from that of an ordinary person. The calmness in front of him was precisely the precursor of a storm. "Junior sister, I think you might have to be a little more careful. In the future, when you come into contact with Su Lingchong, it's best to be more vigilant," Lin Yi reminded. After today's incident, Lin Yi, would definitely be the main target of Su Lingchong's revenge. However, Shanghai Laner, this young miss, even if she had the protection of her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, she might not necessarily be able to sleep peacefully. Once she relaxed even a little, this scheming young Master Su might take the risk out of desperation. Shanghai Laner was stunned, then she waved her fist and bared her two little canine teeth. "This lady isn't afraid of him. If he dares to have any crooked thoughts, this lady will cut him up." On the other hand, the little curly bear at the side very cooperatively sat down and made a cutting motion, causing Lin Yi to involuntarily perspire with shame. He hadn't seen it before, but this master and pet pair were really fierce enough. Chapter 3988. After all, even if they were open-minded, they couldn't stop others from thinking the wrong way. If Shangguan Laner's reputation was affected because of this, there would be endless troubles in the future. When they came to the first floor, as Su Lingchong said, the hall of Huayang restaurant was already full of distinguished guests. Although everyone deliberately restrained their momentum, Lin Yi could still feel that no one present was ordinary. Especially those big shots who were qualified to sit on the main seat, each of them was as deep as the abyss, as if they were sacred. In front of them, Lin Yi could only have a feeling that he was looking up at a high mountain. Among these big shots, there were many faces that Lin Yi had seen before, such as Su Yuanjing, the third elder of Towering Pavilion, Xiao Hongbo, the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the bald elder who guarded the back mountain hall, and Ram Jia, whom he had dealt with before, were also among them. Lin Yi even saw an old acquaintance among them, Hong Zhong of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This was quite out of Lin Yi's expectation, but after thinking about it, it was reasonable. As the full agent of the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the North Island, it was natural for Hong Zhong to be close to the top management of the three pavilions. What's more, no matter his identity or status, he was not under the elders of the three pavilions, so he was naturally qualified to occupy a main seat. However, although Lin Yi was an acquaintance of him, he made friends with him as Lin too. Now, Lin Yi appeared in person, so Hong Zhong might not be able to recognize him. With the appearance of Shanghai Laner, the people who were still greeting each other instantly focused their eyes on the protagonist of today's birthday party. They all smiled, and there was a bit of amazement in their eyes. As the protagonist, Shanghai Laner's dress was no different from usual today. She did not deliberately dress up, nor did she deliberately decorate herself, but even so, it was still difficult to conceal her natural beauty. Under the deliberately created dreamy atmosphere of the audience. She was like a fairy descending to the world, dazzling and dazzling. However, while everyone's eyes were focused on Shanghai Laner, there were still many people who noticed Lin Yi who came down from behind her. After a slight daze, there was a burst of whispers. As for Lin Yi, who was a complete stranger to them, apart from old acquaintances like Su Lingchong and the Southern Sky Gate, the others were completely clueless. Suddenly seeing him appear together with Miss Shangwan, of course there were all sorts of guesses and discussions going on in private. At this moment, Shangwan Tianhua, who was sitting on the main seat in the middle, waved at Laner in a half-doting and half-scolding manner. "Little on her, why don't you quickly come over and greet all the grandpas and uncles? You've made so many elders wait for you. You've really gained a lot of face today. Little junior brother, find a place to sit down first. I'll look for you later." Shangwan Laner turned her head and whispered to Lin Yi. Then, she brought the little curly bear with her. She excitedly trotted over to him. When Su Lingchong saw this scene from afar, he couldn't help but be infuriated to the point that he was burning with rage. After seeing every little action of Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi, he felt that the two of them were doing something sneaky, which was intolerable. To think that I thought this little girl was pure and cute, pure and inviolable. I didn't expect her to be such a slut with a unique taste. I'm really fucking blind. Su Lingchong fiercely spat on the ground. A bold plan quietly took shape in his mind. No matter what the reason was, he could not let Shanghai Laner escape from his palm. Absolutely not. For this, he would not hesitate to use any means and take a little risk. Currently, the Great Hall was filled with a joyous and harmonious atmosphere. Even though there were some irreconcilable grudges between the various major figures present, none of them could reveal any of it. At the very least, in front of everyone, they had to temporarily force themselves to smile. After all, they had to give face to a super big shot like Shangwan Tianhua, and they had no choice but to give him face. In the birthday banquet, other than letting the many big shots gather together to exchange greetings and build up their friendship, there was also an indispensable highlight according to the usual practice. Today was no exception under Su Lingchong's arrangement, and that was to present gifts to the main character of the birthday banquet, Shanghai Laner. According to the status and strength of each other, everyone present gave gifts to Shanghai Laner in succession. This was not only to express their sincerity, but at the same time, it was also the best opportunity to show off their respective strengths. Inevitably, the birthday banquet would eventually more or less degenerate into a grand gathering for everyone to compare. The rarer and more precious gifts in hand represented the greater power of the person. In the future, their position in the eyes of many big shots would naturally be higher. As for those slightly shabby and ordinary gifts, they could not be taken out at all. Even if they were taken out, they would only make a fool of themselves. But this time, under Su Lingchong's deliberate arrangement, not only did they need to give gifts in front of everyone, but they even specially rented 3 appraisal experts from the major chambers of commerce to comment on each gift in public. To put it nicely, it was a birthday appraisal meeting. In this way, the atmosphere of competition at the scene was much stronger than before. After listening to Su Lingchong's announcement, the expressions on everyone's faces were either happy or sad, which could be described as wonderful. The top big shots of the North Island were gathered together, and this was an extremely rare opportunity. Everyone wanted to stand out on such an occasion and leave a deep impression on the many big shots, yet no one wanted to lose face at such a time. Once they left behind a stingy evaluation, then they would complain incessantly. If they knew there was such a segment earlier, then it was reckoned that everyone present would absolutely spare no effort to present the best rare and precious treasures. If they were able to leave a good impression on the many big shots, then it wouldn't be a loss no matter how much they spent. But unfortunately, when Su Lingchong sent the invitations to them, he'd done something in the process and treated them differently. Those who had a close relationship with the Su clan received a reminder at the same time they received the invitation, whereas those who didn't have a good relationship with the Su clan or even had a bad relationship with the Su clan were completely unaware of this. It was even to the extent that they were deliberately misled to think that the birthday banquet this time was just a formality, and there was utterly no need to take the trouble to prepare any precious gifts. Thus, those who received the reminder could show their faces and stand out, whereas those who were deliberately misled would truly be in a tragedy this time. They could only wait in perturbed torment as they waited for themselves to become the laughingstock of everyone present. Chapter 3989. In a sense, neglecting this birthday banquet was equivalent to neglecting the Shangwan First Young Miss, and neglecting the Shangwan First Young Miss was equivalent to neglecting the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shangwan Tianhua. The dangers involved were not something that could be described clearly with just a few words. Chonger, you did well today. In the future, when the Su family is in your hands, I can be a little more at ease. In the process of presenting the gift, Su Yuanjing deliberately got up and walked to the side, nodding approvingly at his grandson. In his view, although Su Lingchong's little tricks were still considered immature, as long as he had this awareness, he would not be too far away from supporting the future of the Su family. Thank you for your praise, grandfather. I will definitely continue to work hard to protect the future of the Su family. Su Lingchong was immediately overjoyed by the praise. Taking over the Su family had always been his long-cherished wish. Today, he was able to obtain the approval of his grandfather, Su Yuanjing, which proved that he was a big step closer to this goal. Su Yuanjing laughed happily and said, however, Chonger, you must firmly remember that schemes are only a small way. If you want to take charge of big things, you must grasp the key people. Otherwise, no matter how hard you work, it will be in vain. After saying that, the old man pointed at Laner, who was intimately snuggling up to Shangwan Tianhua. Su Lingchong nodded and clenched his fists meaningfully. Grandfather, don't worry. She will definitely not escape from the palm of your grandson's hand. Definitely not. It's great that you have this confidence. Don't let grandfather down. Su Yuanjing patted him on the shoulder and turned back to the main seat. Su Lingchong took a deep breath. When he looked at Laner in the distance again, there was a hint of coldness and cruelty in his eyes. If it was before today. If Laner still had a goddess-like position in his heart, then after what had happened just now, this goddess had quickly degraded into a slut who could be used by anyone. And if it was just to deal with such a slut, there was naturally no need to be too polite. At this time, the gift-giving session was coming to an end. Kong Ming Ming said eagerly, "Young Master Su, can I take out my gift now?" Su Lingchong nodded slightly. This was the plan that he had discussed with Kong Ming Ming in advance. He immediately came forward and introduced on her behalf, "Dear elders and friends, next is to present the birthday gift to junior sister Lon, her. He is the new deacon from our welcome pavilion, Kong Ming Ming." Kong Ming Ming quickly raised his head and puffed out his chest, pretending to be calm as he slowly opened the wooden box in his hand. There was an elixir carefully placed inside. Everyone present couldn't help but discuss spiritedly. For a newcomer to appear in the welcoming pavilion, to appear here was already a piece of news that was neither big nor small. Moreover, this newcomer had taken out a pretty good gift, a high-grade foundation building pill. This junior brother Kong, after hearing that he was fortunate to be able to attend junior sister Lon Er's birthday party, under my help and supervision, he finally refined this high-grade foundation building pill by himself for 10 days and 10 nights. It will be a birthday gift to junior sister Lon Er. Su Lingchong spoke frankly with assurance, personally fighting for Kong Ming Ming's reputation. When everyone heard this, they obviously paid more attention to Kong Ming Ming. A mere newcomer from the welcome pavilion naturally wouldn't be able to enter their eyes. But if this newcomer was an alchemist and could personally refine a high-quality foundation building pill, then his value would be huge. One should know that even in the alchemy hall where alchemists gathered, there were not many alchemists who could refine foundation building pill, and those with high quality could be counted on one's fingers. Looking at it from this point of view, this new alchemist named Kong Xiaoming could almost jump into the ranks of the elite alchemists with his skills alone. Even Lin Yi, who knew Kong Ming Ming very well, was quite surprised at this moment. At this moment, he could not help but be surprised. If what Su Lingchong said was true, then he had really underestimated this guy in the past. With his current strength at the early stage of foundation establishment, being able to concoct a high-quality foundation establishment pill meant that this guy had some talent in the field of alchemy. Everyone present was extraordinary. This feeling of being appreciated by everyone simply made Kong Ming Ming feel like he was walking on air. He was so happy that he almost couldn't extricate himself. However, he still remembered the instructions given to him by Su Lingchong in advance. He immediately stood up and bowed. "Young Master Su is overpraising me. As a newcomer in the Soaring Sky Pavilion, I'm doing my best for Miss Shangwan. This is all within my duty and I don't deserve such praise." These words of Kong Ming Ming could be said to be humble and appropriate. It made all the big shots present praise him incessantly. They secretly thought that if this guy was trained in the future, he might be able to achieve great things. After gaining enough limelight, Kong Ming Ming suddenly changed the topic and turned to Lin Yi's direction. "Newcomer Lin, the newcomer of the welcoming pavilion, is here today. You and I, it's rare for us to have the opportunity to attend Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet. You should also show your appreciation. I know that you've always been amazing. Today, you can't embarrass our welcoming pavilion. Why don't you take out any gifts to let everyone have a good look?" The people present were all smart people. The intention revealed by Kong Ming Ming's words fell into their eyes. They immediately revealed a look of watching a good show. Anyway, it had nothing to do with them. No matter who was embarrassed, it was none of their business. However, Lin Yi shook his head lightly. "I'm sorry, I've already given my gift to Miss Shangwan in private." Kong Ming Ming was slightly stunned. Su Lingchong, who was next to him, chuckled and said, "You gave it to junior sister Lon in private." Everyone present gave gifts together. "You're just a newcomer, why do you have to be special? I heard that you're an alchemist like junior brother Kong. What gift did you give? Why not take it out and let everyone evaluate it? After all, there's competition to improve." Su Lingchong's dignified words immediately forced Lin Yi into a corner where he couldn't refuse. Everyone's eyes then shifted to Shanghai Laner. Shanghai Laner secretly thought that something was wrong. Because she was interrupted by the little curly bear just now, she hadn't opened the gift in the spiritual jade box. But even so, she could guess that with Lin Yi's humble background as a new disciple of Clear Cloud Pavilion, it was basically impossible for him to give a gift better than a high-grade foundation building pellet. If he agreed just like that, then this little junior brother of hers would lose out to that annoying subordinate of his. Chapter 3990. Ugh, this traitorous Xiao Bai. Shanghai Laner was speechless. Now, she didn't have to worry about what excuse she could use to get out of the situation. She had to think of a way to smooth things over for Lin Yi. However, the reaction of the audience was far beyond Shanghai Laner's expectations. Not only was there no ridicule as she had imagined, but instead, there was a collective gasp. Shanghai Laner was stunned. With the identity and status of the audience, everyone was knowledgeable. What kind of rare treasures hadn't they seen before? However, Lin Yi's gift was able to shock them all. This was a bit too much. However, when Shanghai Laner saw what was in the spiritual jade box, even she couldn't help but exclaim in disbelief. At this moment, in the spiritual jade box, there were 2 elixirs. Just like Kong Ming Ming's, they were both foundation establishment elixirs. However, the difference was that the 2 elixirs given by Lin Yi were covered with layers of mesmerizing elixir halo. They were actually the legendary and extremely rare Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment elixirs. Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment elixirs were miraculous elixirs that only the legendary super elixir refiners like Zhang Liju could concoct. In the entire North Island Alchemy Hall, there might not be a single alchemist who could refine the Supreme Grade Foundation building pill. If an elixir refiner like Kong Ming Ming, who could concoct top-grade foundation establishment elixirs, could be regarded as an elite, then an elixir refiner who could concoct supreme-grade foundation establishment elixirs would undoubtedly be at the master level. For a moment, no one in the audience spoke. Even Su Lingchong and Kong Ming Ming, who deliberately provoked this scene to make a fool of Lin Yi, were shocked speechless. This is fake, right? Kong Ming Ming couldn't help but mutter. Spending 10 days and 10 nights to refine a high-grade foundation building pill, this was already the limit of what he could achieve, and this was even with the help of Su Lingchong. Wanting to refine a high-grade foundation building pill, in his opinion, was simply impossible. At least it was absolutely not an extravagant hope for an alchemist of his level. But Lin Yi, this guy, from the secular world until now, had been in contact with him for so long, it could be said that they knew each other inside out. He had never heard of this guy having such a heaven-defying talent in alchemy, and even more did not believe that this guy had such a profound attainment in alchemy. How could it be possible for him to suddenly refine a top-grade foundation building pill? No matter how he thought about it, it was not scientific at all. It did not make sense at all. As soon as Kong Ming Ming's words came out, the audience couldn't help but burst into an uproar. If these 2 top-grade foundation building pills were made by a big shot here, it would not be surprising, but now it was made by a newcomer. This was too shocking. 2 top-grade foundation building pills, not to mention that they were priceless. Even if they were calculated according to the lowest price in the past, they were worth at least thousands of spirit jades. This was not something that an ordinary newcomer could afford. Su Lingchong was also immersed in shock, but when he heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. He gave Kong Ming Ming a look and said, "Junior brother Kong, you are an alchemist, and you have personally refined the foundation building pill. You have the most right to say whether this kind of pill is real or fake. Today is such an important occasion, we can't let some people with ulterior motives fool us. It's better to check carefully." Seeing that the big shots present had no intention of stopping him, Kong Ming Ming nodded knowingly, and immediately walked over. Before the little curly bear could react, he snatched the foundation building pill together with the spirit jade box. At this time, Shanghai Laner wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Kong Ming Ming pretended to pick up one of the pills and looked at it, and then showed an expression of as expected. He sneered and said loudly, "I knew that this guy Lin Yi is not a good person. When he was in the secular world, he only knew how to fake things. Now he actually dares to do this. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Everyone, don't be fooled by him. These two so-called top-grade foundation building pills are actually fake pills with a shell." After that, in the exclamation of the audience, Kong Ming Ming suddenly threw the two pills on the ground, and without saying a word, he stepped on them. After stepping on them, he didn't forget to twist them hard. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. Kong Ming Ming really can't change his ways. He had already done the same thing when he was in the secular world. He didn't expect that he didn't learn his lesson now. Now that the occasion was changed, he actually did the same thing again. The audience suddenly fell into a dead silence. Many people at this moment looked at Lin Yi with a bit of hostility. They were all big shots. If they were really cheated by a lowly villain like Lin Yi with fake pills under their noses today, they would become a laughingstock in the future. Su Lingchong and Kong Ming Ming secretly smiled at each other. Anyway, Lin Yi was alone here, and there wouldn't be any big shots who would stand up for him. Even if these two top-grade foundation building pills were originally real, they were now fake. The two pills had been stepped on by Kong Ming Ming to pieces and were beyond recognition. Unless it was a very knowledgeable expert who got hold of it and carefully examined it, ordinary people wouldn't be able to tell whether it was real or fake. But for these big shots present, who would risk losing face to come and personally examine it for the sake of Lin Yi, who they didn't know? This move was called taking the initiative to gain the upper hand. As long as no one stood up for Lin Yi, then there would be no evidence. However, just when the two of them thought that they had succeeded and were ready to enjoy Lin Yi's sullen expression, a figure suddenly appeared beside Kong Ming Ming like the wind. He pushed Kong Ming Ming away and picked up the pill that was stepped on by his foot to carefully examine it. Lin Yi was originally going to get up and settle it himself, but after seeing this person appear, he calmly sat back down with a smile. The person who rushed out to examine the pill could be considered an acquaintance of Lin Yi. It was the spiritual flower manager from the Pill Hall's spiritual medicine nursery. Spiritual flower manager, what are you doing? I already said that this is a fake pill. Kong Ming Ming suddenly felt that something was wrong and couldn't help but sweat profusely. He hurriedly wanted to stop it. He really didn't expect that there would actually be someone who would come to personally examine the pill. Fake pill. The spiritual flower manager was instantly amused and sneered, whether it's the color, the medicinal smell, the pill halo, or the texture, which one of them can you tell that this is a fake pill with an outer shell? Such top-grade foundation building pills, you actually dared to step on two of them. You are fucking wasting the pill. Someone like you is worthy of being an alchemist. Chapter 3991. No, Kong Ming Ming still wanted to rack his brain to argue, but the spiritual flower manager did not give him the chance. He raised his hand and slapped him, sending him flying. Bang! In front of the spiritual flower manager, Kong Ming Ming could not resist at all. He was slapped so hard that he flew for dozens of feet. Then, he fell to the ground in a sorry state and could not get up for a long time. Faced with this sudden scene, everyone present was stunned. However, no one, including the important people present, said anything. Not only did they not reprimand the spiritual flower manager for attacking so brazenly, but the way they looked at Kong Ming Ming was a little more angry, as if he was played in public. This spiritual flower manager was not as simple as being the head manager of the spirit medicine nursery. Not only did he have a strong background, but he was also a recognized genius in alchemy. As long as he had the heart, he would be a strong competitor for the next deputy leader of the pill hole. The reason why he sat in the position of the spirit medicine nursery's head manager, which was not very prominent in the eyes of outsiders, was because he had a special interest in cultivating elixirs. Secondly, it could be regarded as a rotation experience. After all, only after he had experience in all the important positions, he would have a deep understanding and control of the entire pill hole. Naturally, he would be more qualified and confident to compete for the leader of the pill hall in the future. If it was someone else who rashly questioned Kong Ming Ming, the important people present might not believe it. However, since it was the spiritual flower manager, the weight of his words was naturally far greater than that of a new alchemist like Kong Ming Ming. It was clear who they should listen to and who they should believe. After slapping Kong Ming Ming, the spiritual flower manager took out a clean handkerchief from his chest and carefully picked up the 2 dregs that had been stepped on. He did not miss a single one. After that, the spirit flower manager spoke to Lin Yi from afar. Lin Yi, I happen to have 2 foundation pills here as well. The quality isn't as good as yours, but it's still a rare item. What do you think about exchanging them for yours? Lin Yi's 2 foundation building pills were just crushed by Kong Ming Ming. They were a little dirty and ugly. If one did not dislike them, they could still be used normally. However, it was a little inappropriate to continue using them as a birthday gift for Shengwan Laner. The spirit flower manager's suggestion was a timely help to Lin Yi, and it wasn't a small favor at all. However, Lin Yi smiled and said, I have already given these 2 pills to Miss Shengwan. She is the owner of the pills. Spiritual flower manager, you seem to have asked the wrong person. When the spiritual flower manager heard this, she smiled sweetly and said, That's true. I was confused by Kong Ming Ming. Junior sister Lon, what do you say? Shengwan Laner pouted. This was a birthday gift given to her by Lin Yi. Of course, she did not want to exchange it with someone else. However, even if the effect was not affected, it was a little disgusting to let her take the pills that had been stepped on by Kong Ming Ming. It was too much for her. All right then, I will exchange with you, senior brother Ling Hua. Shengwan Laner finally nodded and agreed. At this time, the little curly bear at the side carried a box and ran to the spiritual flower manager as if he was presenting a treasure. He lifted it up with great effort and kept crying. What do you mean? The spirit flower manager opened the box suspiciously and realized that it was the high-quality foundation building pill that Kong Xiaoming had just made. Shengwan Laner held her forehead and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Senior brother Ling Hua, it wants you to exchange this foundation building pill as well. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but smile. This little curly bear was really cunning. The spiritual flower manager smiled and squatted down. She touched the head of the little curly bear and said, Little guy, only the best foundation building pill can be used to exchange for the best foundation building pill. The one in your hand can't be used. At best, it can only be considered a pile of dog shit. Woo woo. The little curly bear was obviously stunned for a moment. Then, it suddenly threw the foundation building pill in its hand far away and even rubbed its paws in disgust. It gave people the feeling that it had really grabbed dog poop, which made people not know whether to laugh or cry. As for this foundation building pill, it was just as the spiritual flower manager had said. It was just like a pile of dog poop. Even though it was thrown on the ground, no one cared about it. No one even took a second look at it. Kong Xiaoming was already coughing up blood as he watched the scene unfold before his eyes. This time, his vision darkened and he almost fainted from anger. This is the result of my hard work for 10 days and 10 nights. If I put it on the market, I can sell it for at least a few hundred spiritual jades. Is it worth it to be looked down upon like this? At this time, Su Lingchong finally couldn't take it anymore. He suddenly said, "Spiritual flower manager, are you sure these 2 pills are real? Don't make a mistake and lose it. It's a small matter if you suffer a loss yourself. If you drag everyone here into becoming a laughing stock, that won't be good. What do you think?" After hearing this, the spiritual flower manager's elegant brows became slightly serious. She said coldly, "Why? Now that you've taken the position of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's manager, your confidence has changed. Do you even want to question my words?" These words could be said to be extremely domineering. However, everyone present seemed to be used to it. The spiritual flower manager usually looked effeminate and was a complete sissy. However, those who truly understood him knew that when it came to a critical moment, this person's domineering courage was definitely not below anyone else's. Of course, with his current status as the head manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, he didn't look as impressive as Su Lingchong's Soaring Sky Pavilion's manager. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't dare to speak to Su Lingchong in such a tone. However, in terms of background, he was stronger than Su Lingchong. In terms of ability, he was stronger than Su Lingchong. In terms of status, other than being the head manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, he was also a strong candidate for the next hall leader of the Pill Hall. One should know that the Pill Hall was the same as the Law Enforcement Hall. It was one of the top among all the halls in the 3 pavilions. If he could become the hall leader of the Pill Hall, he would immediately be on the same level as Ram Jia. Therefore, even if the spiritual flower manager was only a candidate, he could still look down on Su Lingchong. Even Ram Jia would have to look at him differently in the future. After all, which cultivator didn't take medicinal pills? Who couldn't beg someone from the Pill Hall? At that time, one word from the Spirit Flower Hall leader would be enough to put you on the blacklist. Could you really count on Kong Mingming to refine pills for you in the future? Chapter 3992. After a long moment of silence, Su Lingchong took a deep breath to calm himself down before saying, "Steward Linghua, I'm not questioning your judgment, but if these 2 top-grade foundation building pellets are real, does everyone here still think that these precious items worth several thousand pieces of spirit jades coming from a mere Clear Cloud Pavilion disciple like Lin Yi's hands is logical?" With that, even the supervisor of the spirit flowers had nothing to say. Equals the question that Su Lingchong mentioned was something that everyone else had as well, but after considering that it might be related to Lin Yi's privacy, there was no need to offend him. But now that Su Lingchong had asked, they could listen to Lin Yi's explanation. In fact, with the manager's testimony, there was no doubt that these 2 pills were real. The only problem that Lin Yi had to face now was how did these 2 pills come about. Su Lingchong had already said that Lin Yi and Kong Mingming were both elixirs refiners, and there was only one question that everyone wanted to know: were these 2 pills made by Lin Yi himself? Although it was impossible for a newbie from Blue Cloud Pavilion to be able to make these pills, there was a precedent like Zhang Liju, so no matter how small the possibility was, there was still a possibility. Not to mention, the possibility of a mere Clear Cloud Pavilion newcomer taking out 2 top-grade foundation establishing pellets was next to none. Now that the truth was laid out before their eyes, they had no choice but to believe it. "Lin Yi, aren't you going to explain it to everyone? If you can't give us a good reason, we can totally suspect that you stole it. Giving stolen goods to little sister Lan or as a birthday present is not a joke. I don't think I need to explain the consequences, right?" Su Lingchong thought that he had found Lin Yi's weakness. He laughed coldly. Under the gazes of everyone present, Lin Yi was slightly taken aback and couldn't help but fall into hesitation. According to Lin Yi's original plan, he didn't want others to know that he could refine the supreme-grade foundation building pill. After all, an ordinary man's wealth was his own ruin. Once this matter was spread out, it would definitely cause a huge uproar, and it was highly possible that it would lead to unpredictable consequences. With his current insignificant strength, it was very likely that he would be directly captured by some people with ulterior motives and used as an alchemy machine. This was also what he had always been thinking. The reason why there was no interaction with the pill hole. His strength was too low. If he was at the golden core stage, he wouldn't be like this. Therefore, he gave the gift to Shengguan Laner in private today in order to avoid people's eyes and ears and prevent people from spreading the news. The reason why he chose to give Shanghai Laner a supreme-grade foundation building pill was purely out of good intentions. After all, with a woman like Murongzhen eyeing her covetously, even if Shanghai Laner was the young mistress, she would not be able to do anything to her. It was better to increase his own strength as soon as possible. To Shanghai Laner, a person who doesn't like to cultivate, the foundation building pill, which has no side effects, was the most suitable gift. Plus, the grass of heart devouring was already guaranteed. Lin Yi didn't have to worry about not having enough foundation building pills to use in a short period of time. Therefore, giving the 2 ready-made foundation building pills to Shanghai Laner was not inappropriate. He didn't think that under a freak combination of factors. The fact that the 2 foundation establishment pills were exposed in front of everyone really caught Lin Yi off guard. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have done it. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have given her any foundation building pills. However, since things have progressed to this stage, it was too late to regret. There were 2 answers. Either he personally refined it, or he obtained it through other means. Both had their own pros and cons. This was a matter of life and death in the future. Before answering, Lin Yi had to think carefully. If he directly admitted that he personally refined it, the risk could be said to be extremely high. Taking a step back, even if he wasn't captured and used as an alchemy machine, Su Lingchong would definitely hate him even more. There would only be more trouble in the future. Even though the spiritual flower could take care of him, there would always be a time when it couldn't. If he changed to another answer, saying that these 2 supreme-grade foundation building pills were not personally refined by him, even though at first glance, it would indeed be able to avoid the risk of becoming a public enemy. However, with his identity as a newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was easier said than done to fabricate a legitimate story in such a short period of time. Everyone present was an experienced and knowledgeable person. No matter how hard Lin Yi racked his brains, as long as it was a lie that he made up at the last minute, there was at least a 90% chance that it would be exposed in front of everyone. It would not be any lower than this. This risk was really too great. Once the lie was exposed in front of everyone, he would be in a completely passive situation. At that time, if Su Lingchong took the opportunity to fan the flames and suspected that the 2 supreme-grade foundation building pills were not obtained through legitimate means, then it would really be troublesome. Perhaps, the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall, Ram Jia, would personally make a move and use the soul-searching technique on Lin Yi. It was difficult to advance, but it was also difficult to retreat. No matter what choice he made, it was extremely risky. At this moment, Lin Yi felt like he was being roasted on a stake and was suffering. In the end, Lin Yi secretly clenched his teeth and prepared to admit that he personally refined the pills. Even though this was also full of danger, it was still better than the second outcome, which was to become a superstar that received the attention of many big shots. As long as he was careful in everything he did in the future, there was always a chance that he could fight for a chance of survival. However, just as Lin Yi was preparing to lay his cards on the table helplessly, Hong Zhong, who was sitting on the main seat, suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Everyone, I can be a witness to the origin of these 2 supreme-grade foundation-building pills of young hero Lin, because these 2 pills came from the Hong Chamber of Commerce." Hearing this, everyone present was in an uproar. Even Lin Yi himself could not help but be slightly startled. However, he did not show it too much, and very soon, he hid this surprise in the bottom of his heart. Lin Yi did not expect that, without any prior communication, Hong Zhong would actually suddenly stand out to help him out of this predicament. The risk that he had to bear in this was not a little bit. After all, now that Lin Yi had appeared with his original face, in theory, Hong Zhong should not have seen him before. Even if, judging from his figure and temperament, Hong Zhong suspected that he might be the second Lin that he had dated several times, it could only be regarded as a suspicion at most, and should not be 100% sure. Under the premise that the identity could not be confirmed, Hong Zhong rashly stood out to smooth things over for Lin Yi. This could be said to be poles apart from his usual steady and shrewd style of doing things. However, it was precisely this point that displayed his unique and awesome side. Chapter 3993. Just through the 2 ultimate-grade foundation building elixirs and that box, he has the confidence to confirm that I am Lin Air, and he dares to stand up for me at this critical moment. This time, I really owe him a big favor. Lin Yi could not help but feel grateful in his heart. At a distance of nearly 60 meters, Lin Yi and Hong Zhong looked at each other from a distance and nodded tacitly. Everything was said without words. Seeing that Hong Zhong personally came forward to testify for Lin Yi, this time, even Su Lingchong was dumbfounded. Before facing manager Ling Hua, Su Lingchong at least had the idea of bowing to him on the wrist, but facing Hong Zhong, the big boss of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he really did not have the guts to question him. As the full representative of the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the North Island, in terms of power and status, Hong Zhong was almost no lower than any senior elder of the 3 pavilions. Even compared with his grandfather, Su Yuanjing, he was not inferior at all. Even if Su Lingchong had a few more guts, he would absolutely not dare to open his mouth and question Hong Zhong in front of so many big shots in such a public place. If he dared to do so, there would only be one end for him in the end, and that would be asking to be humiliated. However, not being able to question Hong Zhong face to face did not mean that he would easily let go of Lin Yi. Su Lingchong had an idea and said to Lin Yi, "Since Mr. Hong has personally come forward to testify, then I will no longer doubt the authenticity and origin of these 2 ultimate-grade foundation building elixirs. However, I want to know, Lin Yi, as a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, where did you get so many spiritual jades to buy these 2 ultimate-grade foundation building elixirs?" If there was no reasonable explanation for this question, it would also be very fatal. Generally speaking, there were only 2 sources of spirit jades for newcomers. The first was the monthly salary that the welcoming pavilion gave them, but it was only a trifling piece. The second was obtained through some low-level tasks, such as going to the Spirit Jade Hall to mine and so on. Although this reward was slightly higher than the salary, it was still pitifully little. 2 top-grade foundation building pills would cost at least several thousand spiritual jades. It was impossible for a newcomer to afford them with his meager income. Furthermore, Lin Yi was a grassroots newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Moreover, he had come from the secular world, so he had no background to speak of. Where did he get such a huge sum of spiritual jades to purchase the top-grade foundation building pills? There was definitely something fishy about it. However, Lin Yi was burning with rage. If he had the strength and wasn't a newbie, who would dare to ask him this? There were so many gifts, yet no one asked about the origin of the gifts, and no one even asked about the origin of the spiritual jades used to purchase the gifts. However, Su Lingchong had repeatedly made things difficult for him. Relying on his identity as the big senior brother in charge and his grandfather's power, very few people interfered. Hong Zhong had originally wanted to be a good person to the end, and help Lin Yi to dodge this question. After all, if Lin Yi stumbled on this question, his previous protection would be in vain, and he himself would even be implicated. However, before he could speak, Lin Yi had already answered without hesitation, about this. Previously, Meng Juiguang organized a large group of people, and inexplicably took the initiative to send spiritual jades to me. 3 for 1, and 4 for 1. He said that my spiritual jades were good, and could be used to carve some kind of spiritual jade carving for Miss Shangwan. With so many people rushing to send spiritual jades to me, naturally, I have more and more spiritual jades on hand. Su Lingcheng was stunned when he heard this. He had vaguely heard about this matter from his subordinates, but at that time, he didn't pay much attention to it, so he didn't look for Meng Juiguang to understand the specific situation. Even if Meng Juiguang wants to make a spiritual jade carving, he only needs 1 or 2 pieces. How could he let a large group of people rush to send spiritual jades to you? Do you think they are all fools? Su Lingcheng's mind turned, and he immediately sneered and questioned. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was not flustered. He shrugged his shoulders and said, whether they are fools or not, I'm not sure. Anyway, when they came to exchange spiritual jades with me, they used this excuse. If young Master Su doesn't believe me, why don't you ask Meng Juiguang? This matter was organized by him, and the one who exchanged the most and the most diligent was also him. As for the reason, only he himself knows the best. Fuck. Su Lingcheng couldn't help but curse in front of the crowd. Under the stunned gaze of the crowd, he forcefully swallowed the second half of the sentence. Motherfucker, Meng Juiguang has long been dead, why would I ask? This time, Su Lingcheng was really helpless. With the death of Meng Juiguang, it could be said that the dead could not testify. Regarding the matter of exchanging spiritual jades, apart from Lin Yi himself, among all the people present, only Su Lingcheng and Kong Mingming had heard about it. However, because they didn't get involved, they didn't know the specific situation. The two of them only roughly knew that Meng Juiguang and his group should be exchanging useless jades for the good jades in Lin Yi's hands, and it was impossible for them to send spiritual jades to him as Lin Yi said. After all, Meng Juiguang and his group were not fools. However, if they wanted to expose Lin Yi's lies, they had to confront the people who exchanged spiritual jades with him. This was not easy to operate. Firstly, these people were not at the scene. There were so many important people present, and they wouldn't keep waiting here for such a small matter. Secondly, even if they found these people now, it would be difficult to make them speak the truth in public. One should know that the act of exchanging useless jades as good jades in private was a fraud that the 3 great pavilions and the Chamber of Commerce Alliance had explicitly prohibited. Once it was exposed, one would be severely punished. Who would dare to take such a risk? Seeing that Su Lingcheng couldn't speak for a long time, Shanghai Laner finally found an opportunity to beat up Lin Yi. Now you can't say anything, right? You actually suspect this and that about my junior brother. I don't know who is the one who has a guilty conscience. Humph. Su Lingcheng was choked speechless. Although he was very unwilling to let Lin Yi escape, things had already come to this. In his heart, he also knew that even if he held on to Lin Yi's weak points and refused to let go, it would be very difficult to kill him. There was only one reason. The important people present had already started to not stand on his side. If he continued to be entangled like this, not only would he not be admired by others, he would instead be hated by others. The gains did not make up for the losses. The root cause of all this was none other than one person, Hong Zhong. Actually, most of the people present could see that Lin Yi's final explanation about the source of the spiritual jades had many unbeknownst to them. Simply relying on this point to completely explain the source of the thousands of spiritual jades was actually very far-fetched and not very tenable. Chapter 3994. They belonged to different factions. Hong Zhong was not a member of the 3 great pavilions at all and was not under anyone's jurisdiction. Instead, many high-level cultivators asked to help him. Who would be so stupid to offend him? Now that Su Lingchong had given up, the others naturally wouldn't chase after Lin Yi anymore. Lin Yi could finally heave a sigh of relief as he successfully got through this crisis. However, Lin Yi also knew in his heart that after being targeted by Su Lingchong, he would inevitably be targeted by some people with ulterior motives. Not to mention other things, at least at this moment, the way Yu Zhe looked at him was a little strange. When he used the identity of Lin Air to compete with Yu Zhe for the Star Inkstone, Hong Zhong's attitude towards him was also very polite. After that, Hong Zhong protected him several times. This was seen by Yu Zhe from the beginning to the end. Yu Zhe originally had doubts about Lin Yi. Hong Zhong's performance today became a rare piece of evidence. Who knows, from today onwards, Lin Yi's suspicion would surpass Kong Mingming's and become their number one suspect again. Lin Yi could only smile bitterly. Coming to this birthday party today, he had gained a lot of knowledge, but it had also left behind many hidden dangers and troubles in the future. The saying enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road was really true. At this time, Shanghai Laner trotted over with the little curly bear. She moved in front of Lin Yi and suggested, "Little junior brother, there are too many blind people here. Let's go to the third floor." No matter how simple Shanghai Laner was, after what happened just now, she had already seen that with Lin Yi's awkward identity appearing in such a high-end gathering where important people gathered, once he was slightly targeted, it was easy to become a target of public criticism. And in this kind of place, although Shanghai Laner was the first miss of Soaring Sky Pavilion, the others were not weak and their background would not lose to her too much. After all, she was not Shanghai Tianhua herself. If she wanted to suppress people to protect Lin Yi like she did outside, it was not very effective. Unless her grandfather, Shangguan Tianhua, personally said something. Alas, Shangguan Tianhua hadn't even heard of Lin Yi before, and his identity was special as well. Every move he made in a situation like this would be interpreted in all sorts of ways. Why would he stand up for someone he didn't know anything about? Therefore, for Lin Yi, this could be said to be a place of trouble. Even if he had just escaped a disaster, there would be trouble sooner or later if he continued to stay here. It was better to find a place to avoid attention. For Shanghai Laner, Lin Yi was well aware of her intentions, but he still asked, "Is this okay? Little senior sister, you are also the protagonist today. Now the birthday party is only halfway through. It's not good to leave halfway, right?" Shanghai Laner smiled and said, "What's good about it? Little junior brother, you don't know this. Holding a birthday party for me is actually just a pretense. These high and mighty people have always been concerned about standing in line and power. Why would they care about whether a little girl like me is here or not?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. But thinking about it carefully, Shanghai Laner's words were also reasonable. In this kind of occasion where the big shots gathered, the protagonist could only be one thing: power. "Well, thank you little senior sister for your kindness." Lin Yi thought about it and nodded. Although following Shangguan Lan like this might cause gossip and even some rumors, it was better than continuing to stay here, being despised by others for nothing, and bearing those unpredictable risks. After the two agreed, they immediately got up and prepared to go upstairs with the little curly bear. However, when they just walked to the stairs, they were stopped. With Shanghai Laner's identity, ordinary people naturally didn't dare to stop her. But at this time, the person who stopped in front of the two was the organizer of this birthday party, Su Lingchong. "Little junior sister Lan, where are you going? The party is only halfway through." Su Lingchong had a fake smile on his face. Su Yuanjing just reminded him that he must grab hold of this key person. Naturally, he couldn't let Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi slip away quietly. If a single man and a single woman caused any immoral things, then it would have nothing to do with Su Lingchong anymore. Where this young miss wants to go is none of your business. Shanghai Laner rolled her eyes at him and snorted in dissatisfaction. Before this, although she hated Su Lingchong very much, but because of the face of a senior, she could still barely pinch her nose and feign civility. But today, after seeing Su Lingchong's hateful face of making things difficult for Lin Yi, she felt disgusted even feigning civility with him. So, she might as well shed all pretense of cordiality and save herself from feeling disgusted in the future. Su Lingchong couldn't help but choke. He had never been so disdainful and despised in his face, and he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Fuck, this woman found a wild man, and even the tone of her speech is different. What a bitch. If it wasn't for him having misgivings about Shanghai Laner's identity, Su Lingchong had the intention to drag this adulterous couple outside and directly chop them into pieces. But unfortunately, he couldn't. Not only could he not, he had to be patient and properly serve this young Mississippi. Otherwise, if his grandfather, Su Yuanjing, were to find out that he was despised by this young miss, then wanting to take over the Su family in the future would become a daydream. What? This young miss hates fellows like you that have a belly full of evil tricks and a belly full of crafty schemes. Quickly move aside for this young miss. Shanghai Laner snorted angrily as she asked Su Lingchong to move aside. The corners of Su Lingchong's mouth twitched, and he forcefully suppressed the flames of rage in his heart as he forced a smile and said, "Junior sister, you've really misunderstood me. I suspected Lin Yi earlier because I wholeheartedly thought for you, and I was deeply afraid that you would be deceived by others. Never mind, I was misled by this kid Kong Ming Ming earlier, and I was indeed slightly rash and offended young hero Lin. Why don't I take this opportunity to toast a cup of wine to young hero Lin, and take it as a token of apology?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su Lingchong gestured to the servant beside him to pass over a cup of wine, and he personally poured a cup for Lin Yi and himself before passing it over to Lin Yi. Lin Yi looked on coldly from the side, and he didn't extend his hand to receive it. He didn't believe that this fellow, Su Lingchong, would really be so kind and sincerely apologize to him while accompanying him in drinking. "Young hero Lin, this young master is personally apologizing to you. You wouldn't be unwilling to even give this little bit of face, right? As men, we can't be so lacking in magnanimity, right?" Su Lingchong laughed in ridicule, and then he seemed to have recovered from his shock as he slanted his eyes and looked disdainfully at Qin Shi. "Speaking of which, young hero Lin, you wouldn't be afraid that there's poison in the wine, right? Do you really think that our Heaven Stage Island is as dirty and despicable as your secular world? So petty, you really can't see the world." Chapter 3995. Change wine glasses. Even little junior sister Lon, doesn't trust your senior brother. Su Lingchong's brows raised when he heard this, and then he puckered his lips helplessly. "All right, then change wine glasses. In any case, your senior brother is magnanimous, and there's nothing that can't be seen in the light." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Lingchong didn't hesitate in the slightest to do as he said, and he gave others the feeling as if there really wasn't anything fishy about this, and he was purely toasting and apologizing to Lin Yi. Lin Yi originally didn't want to drink this cup of wine from him. After all, there were all sorts of extraordinary things in the cultivation world, and it wasn't like the mortal world that only had those few medicines that everyone knew of. If Su Lingchong really wanted to add something into the wine, then even with Lin Yi's strength, it would be extremely difficult for him to notice it. If he were to fall into Su Lingchong's trap because of this, then who knew what unforeseen consequences would occur. But since Shanghai Laner had already said so, it wasn't good for him to disregard it like this, and he could only receive Su Lingchong's wine cup. "Young hero Lin, this young master will drink first as a sign of respect. Please." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Lingchong directly drained the wine in a single gulp. Lin Yi brought the wine cup close to his nose and sniffed it, and besides the wine fragrance and spirit energy that filled his nose, he didn't notice anything unusual. Su Lingchong sneered endlessly in his heart when he saw this scene. How could the methods I use be so easily exposed? It's simply wishful thinking and naive to the point it's cute if you want to smell something wrong purely by relying on your nose. Lin Yi still didn't have the confidence in his heart, but since this was exchanged from Su Lingchong, then even if Su Lingchong had really added something into the wine, it would surely not be something that could kill him in a short period of time. Otherwise, even if Su Lingchong held the antidote in his hand, it was difficult to guarantee that nothing would go wrong after being delayed for a while by Lin Yi. Moreover, this was a critical occasion where great figures had converged after all. If he were to really use poisoned wine to cause someone's death, then Su Lingchong would have to bear the consequences. After all, Shanghai Laner could testify that the wine that Lin Yi drank came from him. Therefore, one thing that Lin Yi could be sure of was that even if something was added to the wine, it would at most be some unorthodox supplementary ingredients. There would be some effect in a short period of time, but it would definitely not be too strong, nor would it leave any obvious after effects. Su Lingchong was not an idiot. Lin Yi could even further speculate that if this fellow really wanted to add something, then the effect would probably not be easily noticed from the beginning to the end. It was very likely that even if the effect took effect, it would be misunderstood as drunkenness. What? Young hero Lin still doesn't dare to drink it. This is slightly not giving this young master any face, and it's too embarrassing, right? Su Lingchong urged right away when he saw Lin Yi not moving for a long time. Since you're begging me to drink it, I'll drink it. At this moment, the gazes of the surrounding people had already been attracted over. Lin Yi couldn't continue to refuse and hesitate, so he immediately smiled and drank the wine in the cup. Very good, you can pick up and let go. This is the tolerance that a true man should have. Su Lingchong smiled proudly without a trace. He turned around and poured another cup for Lan and said, Junior sister Lan today is your birthday. I, as your senior brother, should toast you a cup. Junior sister, you won't refuse, right? Lan originally didn't want to bother with this annoying fellow, but when she saw Shanghai Tianhua and Su Yuanjing looking over from afar, she couldn't just brush her sleeves and leave. She could only take the wine cup patiently and said with a pout, let me make it clear first. I'm not giving you face, I'm giving face to your grandfather. You don't have any face in my eyes. This bitch. Su Lingchong was infuriated by these words. In the past, when Lin Yi hadn't appeared, although Lan sometimes had the temper of a young miss, in his eyes, her flaws couldn't obscure her beauty. But now, after he saw her colluding with Lin Yi, the more he looked at her, the more he felt that this woman was a scoundrel who could sleep with anyone. They were a pair of dogs. Yes, junior sister Lan is a proud daughter of the heavens. Not anyone can give face to her. Su Lingchong nodded and smiled apologetically, but the corners of his mouth unconsciously curved into a sly arc. No matter what you say, as long as you drink this cup of wine, you won't have the final say in the future. Shanghai Laner snorted and couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Su Lingchong anymore. She immediately raised her head and was about to drink the wine. Anyway, this was a special spiritual wine. She had drunk a lot since she was young, so drinking a few cups wasn't a problem at all. Lin Yi, who was at the side, was a little worried. Su Lingchong's actions clearly showed that there was something fishy. If it was as he expected, something must have been added to this spiritual wine. With Lin Yi's strength and willpower, he didn't care much about it, but if it was put on Shanghai Laner, then it was hard to say. However, Just when Su Lingchong's scheme was about to succeed, the little curly bear suddenly jumped onto Shanghai Laner's body. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was unprepared, he actually licked the wine clean in one gulp. "Little White, you little drunkard." Shanghai Laner instantly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although this scene was unexpected, it was within reason. It wasn't the first time that the little curly bear had secretly drunk spiritual wine. In fact, this fellow had already displayed the potential of a drunkard since he was young. Ever since he fell into a wine jar and became drunk, the little fellow would steal any wine he saw. He had never let go of a chance like this, so of course, he wouldn't let go of such an opportunity before him. This time, Su Lingchong was dumbfounded. He had tried so hard to make Shengguanlan, or drink the spiritual wine, but in the blink of an eye, it went into the stomach of the little curly bear. What the hell was this? Alright, now Little White has drunk it on behalf of me. You're fine now, right? Quickly make way for me. Shanghai Laner raised her head towards Su Lingchong. This can't be counted, right? Su Lingchong quickly poured another glass of wine and wanted to make Shanghai Laner drink it. Unfortunately, Miss Shangguan didn't even look at him. She directly called out to Lin Yi, bypassed him and went upstairs. Fuck. Su Lingchong could only curse gloomily. If it wasn't for this kind of public occasion, he would even have the intention to force Shanghai Laner to drink it. Although this plan was an impromptu idea, whether it could be successfully completed or not was related to his future. He couldn't allow any mistakes. However, now that Shanghai Laner had already brought Lin Yi upstairs, no matter how Su Lingchong lowered his head and stamped his feet, it was already futile. At this time, if he forcefully followed up and forced Shanghai Laner to drink, it would be too conspicuous. He was afraid that everyone present would start to suspect his motives. Chapter 3996. A wisp of a sinister sneer flashed on the corners of Su Lingchong's mouth as he withdrew a small yellow pill from his bosom and stuffed it into his mouth without saying a word. This was precisely the antidote that he'd prepared for himself in advance. Before he'd apologized to Lin Yi earlier, he'd already expected that Lin Yi wouldn't trust him, and it was only logical that he'd brought up the matter of exchanging wine cups. Thus, he'd added supplementary ingredients into the entire jug of spirit wine that he'd prepared. No matter who drank it, no matter which cup of wine they drank, they would surely fall for it, and there was no possibility of escaping. Just as Lin Yi had speculated earlier, the supplementary ingredients that Su Lingchong had added into the spirit wine weren't some potent ingredients with obvious effects. After all, the current situation was too sensitive. It had to be known that the great figures seated downstairs were all people with remarkable abilities, and even the slightest bit of unusual movements wouldn't be able to escape their perception. Thus, even if it was a drug that was added into the wine, it had to be a drug that wouldn't cause others to suspect it. The drug that Su Lingchong used this time was called immortal intoxication, and it was a type of simple hallucinogenic drug. During the period when the drug took effect, it would cause one's mind to be in a trance, and thus achieve the same effect as drunkenness. According to legend, this was a type of drug that specifically targeted at confusing the divine sense of cultivators. Although its effects weren't considered violent and wouldn't cause death, and there weren't any side effects afterwards, but when the drug took effect, even immortals wouldn't be able to endure it. Thus, it had the name of immortal intoxication. Immortal intoxication was colorless and tasteless, and its effects were exactly the same as drunkenness. Thus, even if Laner and Lin Yi were to drink it in front of so many great figures, and even if the drug took effect, it wouldn't arouse any suspicions. It was even to the extent that the person involved might not be able to notice it. This was the unique point of immortal intoxication. Perhaps this effect wasn't formidable, but if it was placed in some special situations, it was extremely practical and practically didn't carry any risks. Just like right now, it was a superb weapon to help Su Lingchong succeed. After the drunk immortal was taken with the spirit wine, it would slowly take effect over a period of time, and the medicinal effect would gradually increase from weak to strong. This was like the process of boiling a frog in warm water. When the medicinal effect reached its peak, even the gods would not be able to withstand it, let alone a mere Lin Yi. According to Su Lingchong's original plan, before Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi went upstairs, he would make them drink the immortal drunk. This way, when the effects of the drug were at its strongest, both of them would be in a trance. At that time, if he wanted to do anything, it would be completely up to him, young Master Su, and it would be effortless. But now, Lin Yi had drunk the drunk immortal, but Shanghai Laner had not. If Su Lingchong wanted to smoothly execute his next opportunity, he would have to spend a little more effort. Fortunately, Shanghai Laner's strength was weak. With the strength of Su Lingchong's foundation establishment great perfection, it was really easy to deal with her without leaving a trace. Moreover, he could guarantee that he wouldn't expose any clues. While Su Lingchong was scheming and preparing for the next step, Lin Yi followed Shanghai Laner to the third floor. Although he had been carefully feeling every change in his body, he still didn't feel any obvious abnormality. Lin Yi couldn't help but mutter in his heart. There were only two possibilities to explain this. Either Su Lingchong didn't drug her, or he really did drug her, and the drug was just as he had speculated, the medicinal effect wasn't fierce or fatal. Just as Lin Yi was muttering, the little curly bear next to him began to act up. The little guy stumbled, swayed his body, and jumped up and down everywhere. When he saw a table, he would climb, and when he saw something, he would smash it. He had the posture of a child who had gone berserk. Lin Yi looked at this scene dumbfounded. He had never seen the little curly bear be so violent. He couldn't help but be speechless and asked curiously, "What's wrong with it?" Shanghai Laner, on the other hand, had an expression as if she was used to it. She shrugged and said, "What else can it be? This little guy is acting crazy because of the alcohol. In the past, every time he secretly drank wine, he would be like this. But today is a little strange. Why is it like this after just one cup? In the past, he would drink a lot, but his alcohol tolerance isn't so bad." Hearing this, Lin Yi shook his head thoughtfully. No matter how good the little guy's alcohol tolerance is, it also depends on what kind of wine it drinks. Even if it can drink 1,000 cups and not get drunk, there are some wines that it will get drunk after drinking only 1 cup. What kind of wine is it drinking? Xiao Bai used to drink spiritual wine, so there's no difference. Shanghai Laner seemed to understand but didn't understand. Lin Yi smiled and didn't speak. He walked to the side and sat down cross-legged. He began to circulate his mental cultivation method to get rid of the effect of the spiritual wine he just drank. Through the performance of the little curly bear, Lin Yi could now be 100% sure that the situation he had just speculated was completely correct. Su Lingchong really added supplementary materials to the spiritual wine. The endurance of the little curly bear was far worse than that of a cultivator, so the effect of the medicine took effect so quickly. If it was Lin Yi himself, it should take a while for the effect to take effect. No matter what, as long as it was not a violent and fatal poison, Lin Yi had a way to deal with it calmly. He himself was a healing master, and being poisoned was also a kind of internal injury. However, Lin Yi soon discovered that although the medicine in his body was not violent and fatal at all, it was continuous. Every time it felt like it could be easily removed, but every time it came back immediately. After a long time, there was no sign of it being eradicated. This thing is really hard to deal with. Lin Yi shook his head, speechless. He'd always been confident that he'd be able to recover quickly no matter how heavy his injuries were, but this little medicine that wasn't even close to being fatal was like a sticky plaster that wouldn't go away no matter how hard he tried, leaving him helpless. Lin Yi still didn't know that he was in drunk immortal at the moment. Even gods could only get drunk, how could it be so easy to get rid of it? However, even if he couldn't completely remove the medicine in a short time, Lin Yi must try his best. This way, he could still control the situation in his body and not go crazy like the little curly bear. If nothing unexpected happened, Su Lingchong should take action soon. Otherwise, he couldn't just put some medicine to help him get drunk. Little junior brother, what are you doing? Seeing Lin Yi's weird look, Shanghai Laner couldn't help but ask. Nothing, I can't handle the alcohol, so I'm trying to get rid of it. Lin Yi smiled non-committally. Get rid of the alcohol. Little junior brother, you just drank a cup and you can't handle the alcohol. How are you going to socialize with these old foxes in the future? It seems that little senior sister has to get you a few jars of top-grade spirit wine in the future so that you can practice well. Shanghai Laner still didn't understand the reason and giggled. Chapter 3997. While they were talking, the little curly bear had already turned the place upside down. Although this little guy had no strength, when he was drunk, his destructive power was really not to be underestimated. In the blink of an eye, he had already demolished half of the house. If it went on like this, the whole third floor of Huayong restaurant would probably fall. Seeing the little curly bear picked up the giant scissors used to trim the giant bonsai in the house and waved it around, and it might hurt itself if it was not careful, Shanghai Laner had no choice but to catch up with it and comfort it. However, before she could catch up with it, her neck was immediately hit by a knife. Her eyes rolled up and she directly fainted. At the same time, this person didn't even let the little curly bear go. He was kicked to the corner. At this moment, Lin Yi, who was meditating in the distance, couldn't help but twitch his eyelids when he saw this scene. At the same time, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, showing a trace of, as expected, smile. The person was Su Lingchong. Young hero Lin, you probably didn't expect that we would meet again so soon, did you? Su Lingchong kicked the little curly bear aside, then glanced at Sheng Wanlan, who was unconscious on the ground, and sat on a large chair with a greedy look in his eyes, with the posture of a superior. Lin Yi raised his head and looked at him. He imitated the little curly bear and shook his head. His eyes were absent-minded, and he didn't answer. Su Lingchong suddenly laughed. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Young hero Lin just drank wine, and now you should be in a daze, right? A bumpkin from the secular world like you should have never drunk such high-grade spirit wine. Do you think all spirit wines have such a strong aftertaste? Ha ha ha, drunk immortal can even put down immortals. A grassroot ant like you can taste the taste of drunk immortal before you die. It's not a waste of your life. Lin Yi still didn't respond. In Su Lingchong's eyes, Lin Yi's mind was completely in a trance. He was barely keeping his eyelids open and maintaining the last bit of consciousness. Maybe he wouldn't be able to bear it in the next moment. Not to mention Lin Yi's insignificant strength, even a master in the peak of Zhuji realm like Su Lingchong couldn't bear the effect of drunk immortal. Su Lingchong sneered, and his gaze carried lust as it swept up and down Shanghai Laner's exquisite and delicate body, and he was extremely covetous. Although Shanghai Laner looked like a little girl at first glance, and her figure was not as mature and charming as Murong Zhen's, she had a bit more of a youthful and pure temptation. Especially with the noble identity of Shanghai Tianhua's only granddaughter, even Su Lingchong, who was a veteran of the pleasure scene, could not hold himself back at this moment. Seeing that Su Lingchong was about to touch Sheng Wanlaner's body, Lin Yi suddenly let out a muffled groan. He seemed to be struggling to get up, but his forelimbs did not listen to him. He tried to get up a few times and fell down a few times. He was simply unable to stand firmly. Even after drinking the immortal drunk, you can still retain the last bit of consciousness. Young hero Lin, you really can be considered a top-notch character. This young master has really underestimated you. Su Lingchong had a ridiculing smile on his face as he walked over and squatted down in front of Lin Yi. Fine, just because of this rare performance of yours, this young master will let you die with understanding today. What do you want to do? Lin Yi rolled his eyes as he spoke with an unclear voice. What does this young master want to do? Isn't that something very clear? With good wine and beautiful women here, having a drunken mess is all human nature. What do you think, young hero Lin? Su Lingchong glanced complacently at the unconscious Shanghai laner, and could not help but swallow his saliva. Drunken mess. Lin Yi's heart instantly quivered. Although he had already guessed this before, hearing it personally from Su Lingchong, it was still somewhat inconceivable. If it was any other woman, Su Lingchong, young Master Su, could have as many as he wanted. But who was Shanghai laner? She was the beloved daughter of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua. If Su Lingchong dared to touch even a strand of her hair, the only outcome would be death. But now, this fellow was actually prepared to force himself on her. Su Lingchong, this fellow, had eaten the guts of a leopard, or was his brain overflowing with sperm? Even if he was courting death, he shouldn't do it in such a way. You think it's inconceivable? You think that this young master shouldn't have such big guts? Ha ha ha. Su Lingchong laughed complacently, and sinisterly pointed at Lin Yi. Young hero Lin, please rest assured. I really don't have the guts to force myself on junior sister Lan, but this young master really can't bear to part with junior sister Lan, So after thinking about it, I can only ask you to help me reluctantly. What kind of help? Lin Yi continued to pretend to be confused. Su Lingchong glanced at him disdainfully, got up, and walked towards Shanghai laner. Of course it's to take the blame for this young master. Young hero Lin, you were drunken mess, and forced yourself on junior sister Lan, In the end, you were discovered by this young master and killed in one move. After that, this young master can show his magnanimity, disregard the former enmity, and accept junior sister Lan, who has already become a used woman. How about it, this young master's move will gain both fame and fortune, right? You're really despicable. Lin Yi was secretly shocked when he heard this. If he really followed Su Lingchong's plan, as long as he splashed dirty water on me, a dead man, there would be no evidence, and there really wouldn't be any loopholes. Despicable. Humph, only the weak who failed will keep such ignorant and stupid words hanging on the corner of their mouths. Su Lingchong paused, turned his head, and sneered. This young master has to thank young hero Lin. If it weren't for you being so close to junior sister Lan, this young master wouldn't be able to find such an opportunity and excuse. Maybe I might not be able to get close to her even after waiting for a few decades. Now, I can finally get what I want. This young master can finally be the son-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua, and your contribution can't go unnoticed. Ha ha ha. After that, Su Lingchong couldn't wait. He took out a small bottle of potion from his arms, turned around, and was about to pour it into Shanghai laner's mouth. This was the immortal drunk he had prepared. Since he couldn't let Shanghai laner drink it with the spiritual wine just now, he could only force it on her now. Although she had been knocked unconscious now, she might wake up later. It was safer to let her be in a trance. With a ferocious and wild smile on his face, after drinking the immortal drunk, Su Lingchong pulled up Shanghai laner's belt with one hand and was about to undress her. He had imagined this action for many years, and he had practiced it very skillfully on other women. It was true that there were few female cultivators in the 3 pavilions of the North Island, but with his identity, it was very easy for him to find a few women to play with. He didn't need to ask at all, and Lu Tianyu and other people would take the initiative to do it for him. Chapter 3998. He watched helplessly as Su Lingchong pulled open his belt with one hand and Sheng Wanlaner's body was about to appear in front of him without any obstruction. Finally, Lin Yi, who had been accumulating power for a long time, suddenly exploded. With Su Lingchong's foundation establishment Great Circle strength, under normal circumstances, Lin Yi had almost no chance of winning against him, unless it was like last time when he was dealing with Nan Tianyong, where Lin Yi threw a super true chi bomb at his face. Lin Yi originally didn't have such an opportunity. If he didn't have the drunk immortal, Su Lingchong might have killed him right away and then splashed the dirty water on the dead body, ending all troubles once and for all. However, precisely because he believed too much in the effects of the drunk immortal, Su Lingchong simply didn't think that Lin Yi would actually be able to explode and fight at this time. In addition, at this moment, his entire mind was focused on Shanghai Laner. By the time he reacted, Lin Yi had already rushed behind him and was only a step away. When Su Lingchong finally sensed the threat behind him and his heart thumped, Lin Yi had already pressed the true chi bomb towards the back of his head. Taking advantage of the time when the drunk immortal was forced out, Lin Yi also conveniently condensed a true chi bomb. Although because of the time limit, it wasn't as exaggerated and abnormal as the one he used against Nan Tianyong last time, if it really exploded on his face, its power also couldn't be underestimated. Lin Yi's movements could already not be said to be slow. The strength of the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage was already displayed to the extreme by him. In this short gap of time that couldn't even be considered as short, Su Lingchong unexpectedly arrived first despite moving later, turning around and grabbing towards his face. "You actually dare to sneak attack this young master, you really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Su Lingchong disdainfully sneered. The imposing manner of a strong expert was undoubtedly displayed. Lin Yi was secretly shocked in his heart. Although Nan Tianyong, a peak late-stage foundation establishment stage expert, was basically defeated by his hands, he actually didn't know how strong an expert of this level was. But now, he finally saw what was called the foundation establishment Great Circle. Although Su Lingchong was born as a young master, his personal strength was not inferior to his illustrious status. If the two of them were to fight one-on-one, even with Lin Yi's confidence, he had to admit that he was no match for this young Master Su. He might not even be able to endure a single exchange. But now, Lin Yi had been preparing the true chi bomb for a long time, and he had suddenly launched it from the enemy's back when the enemy was unprepared. But in the end, he still didn't succeed. Fortunately, Lin Yi was already prepared for this. Taking advantage of Su Lingchong's grasp, he pushed the true energy bomb into his opponent's hand. Insignificant skill. Su Lingchong curled his lips in disdain. He had never seen a move like the true chi bomb before. He thought that it was just a knockoff martial skill that he had never seen before. It was not worth mentioning because he could catch it with one hand. However, as soon as the true energy bomb entered his hand, Su Lingchong's expression immediately changed. The powerful true energy contained within it caused even a peak foundation establishment expert like him to be secretly shocked. More importantly, at this moment, the huge mass of true energy in his hand was already ready to move. It seemed like it was about to explode. Only now did Su Lingchong realize that he had been tricked by Lin Yi. This mass of true energy was not the knockoff martial skill that he had imagined. Instead, it was a downright hot potato. "You should be very clear about the power of this Dan fire bomb that I secretly learned from you, right? It is enough to raise this Huayong residence to the ground. If you don't want to make a big deal out of this and get brainwashed by those big shots downstairs, "Young Master Su, you better think of a way quickly. Otherwise, the consequences will be hard to say." Lin Yi quickly dodged and retreated. Only then did he speak calmly. Before he let go of the true energy bomb, he did not dare to detonate it. After all, the distance between the two of them was too close. If he detonated it, both of them would be injured. However, Lin Yi's strength was obviously weaker than Su Lingchong's. Although he could recover afterwards, the opponent could kill him while he was healing. Despicable small fry. Su Lingchong gnashed his teeth and cursed. However, he could only temporarily let Lin Yi go. He braced himself and first got rid of the true energy bomb in Lin Yi's hand. Just as Lin Yi had said, if he allowed this true energy bomb to explode, then not only would his plan to force himself on Lin Yi become a bubble, even if he wanted to pour dirty water on Lin Yi, it would be very difficult for people to completely believe him. Because at that time, Shanghai Laner would definitely not stand on his side. Therefore, he could only follow Lin Yi's plan and first get rid of the true energy bomb in his hand. Only then could he take the next step. "Didn't you just say that being despicable is the stupid thing of weaklings?" Lin Yi sneered. Their strengths were completely unbalanced. If he did not plan this way, he would not be able to deal with a person like Su Lingchong. Su Lingchong snorted coldly. He had no time to waste his breath on Lin Yi. Holding the true energy bomb in his hand, his entire body abruptly erupted with an incomparably powerful aura. The strength of a foundation establishment perfection stage expert was instantly urged to the limit, and layers of true energy firmly wrapped around the true energy bomb in his hand. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, the true energy bomb finally exploded. However, under Su Lingchong's full control, it did not spread out. Its power was actually completely blocked by his true energy. As expected of a foundation establishment perfection stage expert. Such strength really caused others to be dumbstruck. Lin Yi sighed inwardly, but the movements of his hands did not stop. Taking advantage of the gap when Su Lingchong was suppressing the true energy bomb, Lin Yi immediately struck out with the 23 moves of the Frenzy 8 trigrams palm towards Su Lingchong's face. "A lowly ant like you dares to compete with me? You really don't know death." Su Lingchong originally wanted to show off, but he had only spoken halfway when he was slapped in the face by Lin Yi. Bang! At this moment, Su Lingchong had just consumed 90% of the true energy in his body, and it was precisely at the moment when he didn't have the strength to continue. This time, he was completely caught off guard. A dignified foundation establishment perfection stage expert was struck flying by Lin Yi, and his face was badly mutilated and he was in an extremely sorry state. Damn it! Su Lingchong was struck by this palm to the point his body sank into the solid corner of the wall, and he repeatedly coughed up blood without end. He was unable to get up for a long time, and his eyes spat out flames as he stared fixedly at Lin Yi, wishing for nothing more than to slice Lin Yi into pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. But conversely, Lin Yi's current state couldn't be considered to be good. After successively utilizing the true energy bomb and the 23 moves of the Frenzy 8 trigrams palm, the true energy within his body had been completely drained, and even the space within the jade pendant was unable to instantly replenish it. Don't forget, the medicinal strength of the immortal intoxication still remained within his body. Feeling the layers of dizziness that struck his mind, Lin Yi couldn't help but shout in his heart. Now that the true energy within his body was reduced, the effects of the immortal intoxication would immediately return. If he didn't quickly adjust his breathing and meditate, he would probably lose his mind very quickly, and this was slightly fatal. Chapter 3999. Heh heh, this young master thought that you, Lin Yi, were so resourceful, but it turns out that you can't resist the bewitchment of the immortal intoxication either. Very well, this young master originally wanted to give you a quick death, but now this young master has changed his mind. Today, I must let you taste the feeling of living a life worse than death. Su Lingchong said with a ferocious expression as he gnashed his teeth. In a breath's time, as long as Su Lingchong could struggle out from the corner of the wall and regain his movement, even if there was only 10% of true qi left in his body, it would be as easy as pinching a bug to death if he wanted to pinch Lin Yi to death. This was a miscalculation. Lin Yi was extremely anxious in his heart. There was no one here who could save him. If he waited until Su Lingchong got up and still couldn't suppress the effects of the immortal intoxication, he would really die here today. However, how could the medicinal strength of the immortal drunk be so easily eliminated? At this moment, not only did it not weaken, it instead showed signs of increasing in strength, causing Lin Yi to be unable to get up at all, let alone seize the opportunity to deal with Su Lingchong. Finally, Su Lingchong slowly recovered his movement. The wall behind him that was smashed cracked as he got up. The scales of victory had already begun to tilt towards him. Are you ready to die, newcomer Lin? Su Lingchong grinned coldly, completely with the attitude of a victor. However, at this moment, a sudden sound came from behind him. Kacha, kacha, kacha. Turning his head to look, Su Lingchong's face instantly turned pale with fear. It was actually the little curly bear that he had just kicked away, carrying a pair of giant scissors and dashing over. Originally, the little curly bear, this kind of young spirit beast with no strength, was not a threat in Su Lingchong's eyes. Therefore, he didn't put this little fellow in his heart from the beginning to the end, and just kicked it away. Moreover, this little curly bear had already snatched to drink the immortal intoxication downstairs. Its mind was muddled, and it was even less of a threat. However, Su Lingchong had forgotten one thing. The curly bear was a well-known wild drinker. A curly bear that had drunk spirit wine and a curly bear that had not drunk spirit wine were two completely different existences. Before drinking, the curly bear had always been simple and docile. It almost never took the initiative to hurt people. However, after drinking the spirit wine, especially when it was drunk, the curly bear would become extremely ferocious. Not only would one's temperament change, but one's strength would also undergo a complete transformation. It was normal for one's strength to increase by several times or even 10 times. The world called this process drunken madness. Drunken frenzy was the innate ability of the entire curly bear clan. Although the little curly bear was still a juvenile, it still had this ability. Now, not only were its eyes red, even the fur on its body had started to turn red, and it began to emit an obvious ferocious aura. Damn it, how could I forget about this? At this moment, Su Lingchong wished he could give himself 2 tight slaps. The reason why the curly bear clan was able to be ranked among the powerful spiritual beasts was because of their almost heaven-defying racial innate talent, the drunken frenzy transformation. Even if it was an ordinary little curly bear, it would still be a ferocious creature that could not be underestimated after going into a drunken frenzy. With Su Lingchong's strength at the Foundation Establishment Great Circle, it would be fine if that was all. With Su Lingchong's Foundation Establishment Great Circle strength, he could even deal with an adult curly bear after going into a drunken frenzy, let alone a mere juvenile in front of him. The key was that he had spent a lot of effort to suppress the true qi bomb just now. At this moment, there was not even a tenth of the true qi in his body left. Moreover, after being hit head-on by Lin Yi's frenzied fire 8 trigram's palm, his injuries caused his true qi to be in a mess. Even though he had begun to slowly regain his mobility, he had not reached the point where he could fight. Right in front of him was him, a Foundation Establishment Great Circle expert. At his weakest and most powerless moment. The little curly bear's drunken frenzy at this moment was practically asking for his life. It would be strange if Su Lingchong was not scared out of his wits and his face was pale. Looking at the little curly bear carrying the giant scissors that made one's eyelids twitch, growling in a low voice and approaching step by step with an extremely dangerous aura, Su Lingchong was almost scared to the point of wetting his pants. The dignified Soaring Sky Pavilion's young master, the dignified Soaring Sky Pavilion's big senior brother, a dignified Foundation establishment Great Circle expert, in the end, was about to die in the hands of a mere juvenile curly bear. If this matter were to spread out, it would really become a strange story in the world. Xiao Bai, calm down. I'm Su Lingchong, the Su Lingchong who used to give you good food. Don't you recognize me? Su Lingchong was so scared that he stuttered and hurriedly begged for mercy with an obvious tremble in his voice. He was the great Master Su, and he'd never fallen into such a pitiful situation before. He was strong, but he'd been worn down by a newbie like Lin Yi to the point where he couldn't move, and now he was forced to beg for mercy from a little curly bear. No one would believe him if he told them. If the other party was someone like Lin Yi, Su Lingchong might not be so frightened. After all, everyone had scruples and it was impossible for them to attack young Master Su unscrupulously. However, the little curly bear was different. No matter how human-like this fellow was, it was still a ferocious spiritual beast after all. This little fellow was simply ignorant and fearless. As long as it was given a chance, it could really do anything. There wasn't even room for it to beg for mercy. This was even more terrifying than a human. Lin Yi, who was trying his best to suppress the immortal intoxication, looked at this extremely absurd scene in front of him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He clearly felt that it was unbelievable, but it happened right under his eyes. He could only sigh. Fate really made a fool out of people. Gotcha. No matter how Su Lingchong begged for mercy, the little curly bear still carried its giant scissors and rushed to his side without stopping. Like master, like pet. Since the owner, Shanghai Laner, hated Su Lingchong so much, the little curly bear was naturally no exception. That kind of disgust from the bottom of its heart couldn't be bought by Su Lingchong's usual food. Then, under Su Lingchong's extremely horrified gaze, the little curly bear suddenly moved the giant scissors to his crotch. Lin Yi was also stunned when he saw this scene. There was only one sentence that appeared in his mind. It was what Shanghai Laner had said not long ago: if he dares to have any crooked thoughts, I will cut him up. Lin Yi remembered very clearly that when Shanghai Laner said this sentence, the little curly bear even sat down and made a cutting motion. At that time, he thought it was just a joke. Now that he thought about it, the little curly bear was ready to put it into practice. Chapter 4000. At this moment, the little curly bear's fur had turned crimson, and its eyes had also turned crimson. It was clear that it was drunk, and when Su Lingchong saw it, he could not help but feel his scalp tingle. Only now did Su Lingchong remember that the coiled bear and drunk immortal was a publicly recognized forbidden combination. It was already troublesome enough to make the coiled bear drink alcohol, but now, after drinking the drunk immortal, he would immediately enter the extreme state of drunkenness. If he wanted to court death, even the gods wouldn't be able to stop him. Young Master Su, you better bear with the pain, or else it will attract the attention of the important people downstairs. That would not be good. Lin Yi suddenly said meaningfully. Of course, Lin Yi was just saying it casually. In these important people's rooms, there were high-level cultivators who had set up restrictions. Everyone was a Heaven Dao expert, so they could easily use their divine sense to sense what the others were doing. If there were no restrictions, then no one would have any secrets. Even if Su Lingchong shouted, no one would hear it. What the fuck are you talking about? Su Lingchong had just said half of his words when he heard a cracking sound. The giant scissors at his crotch was suddenly closed by the little curly bear. In an instant, the whole world was silent. Staring blankly at the pool of blood at his crotch, Su Lingchong didn't react to what had actually happened for a long time. More accurately speaking, he'd actually reacted, but he didn't dare to believe it in the end. Because he was too shocked, he didn't even feel the sharp pain that came from his crotch. Lin Yi looked at this scene and was also stunned for a long time. After a long time, he said faintly, "From now on, there is another eunuch in the cultivation world." After a while, Lin Yi finally suppressed the effect of the drunk immortal again. He regained his ability to move, but Su Lingchong, on the other hand, sat on the same spot in a daze. From the beginning to the end, he did not make any sound, nor did he make any movement. He even forgot to ask Lin Yi what the again meant. Even so, Lin Yi still did not dare to look down on him. He suddenly changed from a man to a eunuch, especially when the other party was Su Lingchong, the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion who could summon wind and rain and had a bright future. It was impossible to predict what would happen after such a huge change. Although Su Lingchong's current state was not good, no matter what, he was still an expert at the Foundation Establishment Great Circle. If he really wanted to go on a rampage without any regard for anything, and if there were no outsiders interfering, it was almost impossible for Lin Yi to escape unscathed. Staring closely at Su Lingchong, Lin Yi carefully got up. He grabbed the little curly bear, who was about to cut Su Lingchong's body again, and dragged it back from behind. Strangely enough, after the curly bear clan turned into a drunken frenzy, other than a few extremely powerful individuals, the curly bear clan would not be able to survive. Normally, it would lose its mind and not be able to distinguish between friend and foe. However, this little curly bear did not resist when it was hugged by Lin Yi. Apart from looking different from before, it did not resist at all. Instead, it followed Lin Yi's arm and rode on his shoulder. It gave people the feeling that after this little guy went into a drunken frenzy, other than being a little bolder than usual, he was still clear-headed. It was truly unexpected. Otherwise, if he really went on a rampage without thinking, Su Lingchong would probably not be the only one who would suffer this cut. Maybe even Lin Yi would suffer as well. Seeing that Su Lingchong still had no reaction, Lin Yi remained calm, and then carefully picked up Shangguan Laner, who was in a coma because of the immortal intoxication. He held his breath and quietly walked out of the room step by step. Logically speaking, as long as Su Lingchong was still clear-headed, he would not make a move on the little curly bear, nor would he allow Lin Yi to carry Laner away. However, the reality was that this guy was dazed from the beginning to the end. He only stared blankly at the pool of blood under his crotch, as if he was completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world. After successfully carrying Shanghai Laner out of the third floor, Lin Yi finally let out a long sigh of relief. At this time, standing at the top of the stairs, he could already be seen by the people below. Even if Su Lingchong chased after him, as long as he made the slightest movement and was noticed by others, there would naturally be people who would stop him. Today's birthday banquet was really thrilling. Until this moment, even with Lin Yi's temperament, he still could not help but feel a chill down his spine. It was indeed a little risky. He originally thought that this wine would not affect him much. After all, when Lin Yi was in the secular world, he could drink 1,000 cups without collapsing. However, he did not expect that this immortal drunk was really worthy of its name. However, Lin Yi did not regret it. Although the jade pendant space could store the wine in the cup, Lin Yi did not dare to do so. These elites in the Tao of Heaven were different from those normal practitioners in the secular world. Moreover, Su Lingchong's strength was so much higher than Lin Yi's. If there was even the slightest mistake, it might lead to greater trouble. After all, Su Lingchong was watching. This kind of thing could only be done secretly when others were not paying attention. He could not be careless. At this time, a familiar voice suddenly rose in his ears. Huh? Little junior brother, why are you hugging me? Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. He saw Shanghai Laner in his arms staring at him with a surprised face. He quickly loosened his arms and put her down awkwardly. At the same time, he could not help but ask curiously, you were forced to drink the immortal drunk, but you are actually fine. In his opinion, even he could barely suppress the medicinal effect of the immortal drunk with great difficulty. With Shanghai Laner's strength at the peak of the early stage of Foundation establishment, it should be even more difficult for her to withstand it. Why did it seem that the immortal drunk had no effect on her at all? Immortal drunk. Shanghai Laner innocently rubbed the back of her neck that was a little painful. It was the place where Su Lingchong had knocked her out. She said with a blank face, I was forced to drink the immortal drunk. Isn't that Xiao Bai's favorite thing? When did I drink this? Wasn't I talking to little junior brother just now? This young miss was really slow on the uptake. Lin Yi was speechless and shook his head. Just now, you were knocked out by someone. He forced you to drink the immortal drunk. I thought you would be like Xiao Bai, unconscious. Of course not. Although Xiao Bai will go crazy after drinking the immortal drunk, the more he drinks, the more energetic he becomes. In fact, he is sober. Not only Xiao Bai, I am also not afraid of this kind of thing. Since I was young, Grandpa has let me soak in all kinds of spiritual medicine vats every day so that I am immune to all kinds of poison. Normal medicine is completely useless to me, and the immortal drunk is the same. Shanghai Laner proudly raised her neck. Chapter 4001. But in this way, even if little curly bear didn't cut Su Lingchong up, Su Lingchong's scheme today would be very difficult to achieve. Since the immortal intoxication didn't have any effect, if he wanted to force himself on Shangwan Laner, it would be impossible for him not to wake up Shanghai Laner. At that time, once Shanghai Laner screamed, his ending wouldn't be as simple as being cut up, but he would die even faster and more miserably. At this moment, Shanghai Laner lowered her head to look at her loosened belt and finally noticed that her clothes were a little messy. Suddenly, she shyly covered her chest and said, Little junior brother, you're not being good. Quickly tell me, what did you do to senior sister just now? Nothing at all. Lin Yi immediately blushed with shame. In all honesty, he didn't do anything from the beginning to the end. But this little lass's nerves were really thick. Her clothes were in such a mess and she actually took so long to react. Really? Then how did my clothes become like this? Shanghai Laner suspiciously swept her eyes around and suddenly blinked her eyes as she giggled, Little junior brother, just admit it. Don't worry, senior sister won't blame you. Lin Yi was speechless and could only speak frankly, I really didn't. The one who untied your belt was someone else. It was Su Lingchong. The one who knocked you out was also him. I reckon that he's still squatting in the room now. That annoying fellow. Shanghai Laner's expression immediately changed, changing from her relaxed and joking expression to nervously asked, What did he do to me? Actually, he didn't do much. After knocking you out, he fed you with immortal intoxication and untied your belt. He didn't gain any benefits and instead became a eunuch. Lin Yi chuckled. Eunuch? Shanghai Laner was confused. Lin Yi could only repeat the sequence of events from the beginning to the end. After a long while, Shanghai Laner then regained her senses in disbelief. Little junior brother, what you mean is, Xiao Bai cut Su Lingchong. Yes, to be precise, it cut off Su Lingchong's hair. Lin Yi nodded his head. Seeing that Shanghai Laner seemed to be a little worried, he consoled her, "Little senior sister, you don't have to worry. This is all Su Lingchong's fault, he deserves it." Unexpectedly, Shangwan Laner jumped up excitedly in the blink of an eye. She gave the little curly bear a thumbs up and said, "Xiaobai did a good job. I must reward you well for the next month. I've wanted to do this for a long time, but unfortunately, I never had the chance. Now, I've finally gotten what I wanted." Hearing this, Lin Yi felt a chill in his crotch. He felt a little guilty standing next to this young lady who would cut people at every turn. Su Lingchong had yearned for her day and night for so many years. In the end, this little lass always had this kind of dangerous thought. Just thinking about it made Lin Yi panic for this eldest young Master Su. Where's that annoying ghost? Didn't he get cut into a eunuch by Xiaobai? Quickly bring me to see him. Shanghai Laner was eager to try. Her eyes lit up as she repeatedly urged. Lin Yi couldn't help but blush with shame. It seemed that he had to get to know this little senior sister again. Apart from being cute and innocent, she actually had such a heavy taste. It was really unexpected. Although he was still extremely afraid of Su Lingchong, he couldn't resist the repeated urging of Shanghai Laner. Lin Yi could only bring her and the little curly bear back to the room. In any case, Su Lingchong's current state was not good. Lin Yi believed that even if he couldn't win, it shouldn't be difficult for him to stall for time for Shanghai Laner to call for help. Entering the room, Lin Yi's eyelids twitched. He didn't know when Su Lingchong had disappeared. There was only a pool of blood at the corner of the wall as proof of what had just happened. Where's the annoying ghost? Is he hiding? Shanghai Laner looked all over the room for Su Lingchong, the newly promoted eunuch, but she couldn't find him. The disappointment on her face was obvious. Maybe. Lin Yi's tone was also filled with unfathomable bewilderment. Suddenly encountering such a huge incident that could change his entire life, it wouldn't be strange for Su Lingchong to do anything at this time. But if he just disappeared into thin air without a sound, it was still a little strange when he thought about it carefully. Even if Su Lingchong couldn't accept the reality for a moment, even if he was completely disheartened, when he came to his senses, there were only two types of thoughts. One was to give up, and the other was to endure the humiliation. But there was one thing that was very clear. No matter what the result was, Su Lingchong would never let Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner go so easily. He might still have some fear when dealing with Shanghai Laner, but when dealing with Lin Yi, a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion who had no background, he wouldn't have too many concerns when dealing with him in his current state of being greatly stimulated. Lin Yi had even thought that after seeing them return, Su Lingchong would most likely go on a killing spree regardless of everything. Even if he couldn't kill Shanghai Laner, Lin Yi would definitely be buried with him. But he didn't expect that Su Lingchong would disappear into thin air in the room without a sound. It should be known that from the beginning when Lin Yi left the room until now, he had always been at the only position of the staircase. No matter if Su Lingchong went up or down, as long as he walked out normally, it was impossible to avoid his eyes and ears. The only explanation was that this guy jumped out of the window. But through the window, Lin Yi glanced outside. The outside was heavily guarded, almost without any blind spots. At this moment, there wasn't any abnormality. With so many guards, perhaps they wouldn't dare to monitor the inside of Huayong House, but if someone broke the window and came out, it would absolutely not escape their eyes and ears. Not to mention Su Lingchong's current battered and exhausted state, even if he was at the peak of the foundation building peak, it would still be difficult to completely hide from these people and disappear into thin air. This result really made Lin Yi scratch his head. After thinking about it, he could only explain that Huayong House might have other secret passages, but ordinary people just couldn't find them. TSK, I didn't expect that he was still a coward. Shanghai Laner pouted her mouth in disappointment, and then said happily, "But this is also good. The annoying guy has become a eunuch, and he definitely won't dare to pester me in the future." The little curly bear, who seemed to have begun to recover to normal, made a cutting gesture with a fierce expression, as if whoever dared to provoke Shanghai Laner, he would cut that person. Seeing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. However, the precious thing of the dignified young Master Su was broken in the hands of this little guy. The little curly bear was indeed a brilliant achievement. If others looked down on it, they might really follow in Su Lingchong's footsteps. Chapter 4002. Although Su Lingchong had only himself to blame for what had happened today, if Su Lingchong were to go back and fabricate a different version of the story, making himself the victim, things would become unclear. Su Yuanjing, for the sake of his grandson, who he had high hopes for, it was not impossible for him to come out and pester Shengwan Tianhua endlessly. However, Shengwan Lan, her eyeballs spun as she said firmly, "Little junior brother, you don't understand. A scoundrel like Su Lingchong only thinks about how to take over his position all day long, and everything else is fleeting. So, he absolutely doesn't dare tell his family about today's matter. Conversely, he has to conceal it everywhere, as he's deeply afraid that his family will know that he's already become a eunuch. Indeed, if his grandfather Su Yuanjing knew, I reckon that he would be reduced to a marginal character." Lin Yi nodded his head in agreement. This point was not hard to understand. No family would let a eunuch take over the position of power, this was a matter without a doubt. Moreover, even if Su Lingchong told his grandfather about the matter, there would not be any benefits for him. Instead, there would be a huge risk because Shanghai Tianhua would definitely not be indifferent to his only granddaughter's matter. So, there's no need to tell my grandfather about this matter. Otherwise, I and Xiao Bai will be in big trouble. I don't know how long we will be confined for." Shanghai Laner stuck out her tongue and said. Lin Yi could not help but laugh when he heard this. No wonder this lass's words were so insightful, it was because of this. This little senior sister's intelligence and wisdom had always been selectively displayed. Su Lingchong disappeared. Looking at the pool of blood in the corner, Shanghai Laner felt some disgust in her heart. After a while, she pulled Lin Yi downstairs. When the two of them went downstairs, the banquet was just reaching its climax. Many important figures were drinking and chatting with each other. They gathered together in twos and threes, trying to win over each other's friendship. Looking at the crowd, Lin Yi paid more attention to the few groups of people. Nan Tianba and a few others were surrounding Su Yuanjing, fawning over him. As for the law enforcement hall's hall master, Ram Jia, the youngest and most dazzling existence among all the important figures, was nowhere to be seen. It was unknown why he had left so early in such an important occasion. Regarding this, Lin Yi had some inexplicable suspicions in his heart. But thinking of Ram Jia's arrogance, it was not strange for him to leave on such an occasion. For a banquet of this scale, does Hall Master Ram always leave so early? Lin Yi turned to Shanghai Laner and asked. Shanghai Laner thought for a bit, then shook her head and said, "No. He is the law enforcement hall master. His duty is to maintain order. Normally, he stays until the end. And leaves so early unless, if there is a special situation. He will." Special situation. It's nothing. I'm just asking. Lin Yi smiled. Just as Lin Yi was secretly suspicious, an old acquaintance walked in front of him. It was Hong Zhong, the full representative of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. "Young hero Lin, how have you been?" Hong Zhong had a gentle smile on his face, but his words had a deeper meaning. "Manager Hong, how have you been?" Thank you for helping me out today. Lin Yi smiled faintly. It was just a simple conversation, but the two of them had a tacit understanding of each other. Lin Yi had admitted his identity to Hong Zhong. After all, if he wasn't Lin Er, he wouldn't have met Hong Zhong at all. There was no way he could say, "How are you?" He was 99% sure that Lin Yi was Lin Er when Hong Zhong stepped up to help Lin Yi out, but it was one thing for him to speculate in private, and another for Lin Yi to admit it in front of him. If Lin Yi did not admit it, then the favor that he had just risked his life to help would be wasted. Of course, from then on, his evaluation of Lin Yi's character and value would be lowered. Fortunately, Lin Yi was not an ungrateful person and did not give him such a chance. Hong Zhong's eyes lit up. He looked at Nan Tianba and the others in the distance and sighed, "Young hero Lin is really bold. You are surrounded by strong enemies, but you still dare to appear in this kind of situation. This old man has to say, I admire you. What will come will come. Sooner or later, we can only deal with it when it comes." Lin Yi said with an indifferent expression. To be honest, so many things had happened today that he could not have predicted. If he had known earlier, he would have carefully considered this birthday banquet and whether or not he should have taken the risk to come. However, what should and should not have happened had already happened. No matter how much he regretted it, it was useless. Lin Yi's current mentality was that of a person who did not need to worry when there were so many lice, or in other words, a dead pig did not fear boiling water. In the end, there was no such thing as absolute safety in the cultivation world. Threats always existed, it was just a matter of how big or small they were. Lin Yi had already realized this a long time ago. Young hero Lin is really bold. However, if there is anything you need, there is no harm in telling this old man. Although this old man is a bag of old bones, I can still be of use to deal with a small fry. Hong Zhong said with a smile. Then I thank shopkeeper Hong for his good intentions. Lin Yi said lightly. He did not need external help for the time being, at least not before his identity was discovered. After saying a few words to Lin Yi, Hong Zhong did not stay here for long. After all, his identity represented the Hong Chamber of Commerce and he was one of the few popular people present. At this sensitive occasion, he could only stop his contact with Lin Yi at most. Otherwise, if he showed too much favor, he would not be helping Lin Yi, but harming Lin Yi. After this, the birthday banquet had completely become a power event for high-level figures, and it had nothing to do with a small figure like Lin Yi. After being forced to stay for a while by Shanghai Laner, Lin Yi finally left early. Compared to watching the power games of these big figures, Lin Yi would rather go back to his cave residence to cultivate. That way, he would at least feel more at ease. Maybe one day in the future, he would also become one of the big figures present, but at least for now, he had no interest in these bullshit things. Now, Su Lingchong had completely become an enemy that would not rest until he was dead. After being turned into a eunuch by a pair of scissors, it was hard to imagine what kind of revenge he would take in the future. Previously, he would abide by the rules of the game of the three great pavilions, but in the future, it was hard to say. He might personally launch sneak attacks and assassinations. In addition, the threat of Nan Tianba's group had obviously increased. Lin Yi could clearly feel that their suspicions towards him had returned. Chapter 4003. At the same time that Lin Yi went back to his cave to train, Su Lingchong, who had lost his soul, suddenly appeared in a secluded underground secret room. The surroundings were silent and dark, and the only thing he could hear was his own breathing and heartbeat. That bone-chilling feeling that seemed to come from the depths of hell made Su Lingchong, who had lost all hope, wake up. What is this place? Why am I here? Su Lingchong couldn't help but mumble. No one answered his question, so he could only mumble to himself. Immediately after, Su Lingchong subconsciously stretched out his hand to touch his crotch. It was dripping with blood and sticky, and even he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine when he touched it. But he had no choice. He had to endure the intense pain and carefully confirm whether his penis was still there or not. At this moment, Su Lingchong was still holding on to a sliver of hope. What if the little curly bear's scissors had actually cut it wrongly? But when he finally confirmed it, he felt a chill in his heart. His manhood had been cut into two by the evil little curly bear. Suppressing the fear in his heart, Su Lingchong took out the half that was cut off from his crotch with trembling hands. His face was filled with endless hatred and viciousness. Suddenly, Su Ling quivered, and then a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. This was because he suddenly remembered that reattaching severed limbs was not difficult at all for cultivators, especially high-level cultivators who were proficient in the art of medicine. The three pavilions just so happened to have someone like that. Even if his medical skills weren't as high as the legendary miracle Dr. Zhang Liju, he wasn't far from it. If he could get his help, then perhaps he might be able to reattach the broken part of his hand. Thinking of this, Su Lingchong gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand up. After all, no matter how good the medical skills were, there was a prerequisite for reconnecting a broken limb, and that was that it couldn't be for too long. Otherwise, if the broken limb lost its vitality and died, even gods wouldn't be able to do anything. Broken limbs were like that, and this one was even more precious and fragile. Thinking of this, Su Lingchong immediately wanted to find a way out. Up until now, his soul had left his body, and he didn't know how he came to this place. If he wanted to leave, he could only rely on exploring. However, just as Su Lingchong was about to explore this dark place, his eyes suddenly shook slightly. A piece of fluorite appeared out of nowhere and illuminated the surroundings. When he looked around, there were only 4 pitch-black walls in his surroundings, and there was nothing else besides this. Only now did Su Lingchong notice to his shock that a person was shockingly standing less than 3 m away from him. When he suddenly saw this scene, it truly caused Su Lingchong to be terrified to the extreme. After all, with the perception of an expert at the perfection stage of the Foundation establishment realm, even if it was in the darkness, it would be impossible for him to be completely unable to notice the slightest movement of the person's aura. It was absolutely impossible. However, the truth was right before his eyes. Judging from the man's posture, he should have been standing in front of him since a long time ago. Is it a human or a ghost? Su Lingchong forcefully endured the terror in his heart as he asked with a trembling voice. According to his understanding, at such a close distance, only dead people would be able to escape his senses, and it was utterly impossible for living people to do so. Under Su Lingchong's terrified gaze, the other party slowly turned around. His body was covered under a black cloak, and his face was covered with a hideous and terrifying ghost mask, causing others to be unable to see his true appearance. So what if he's human? So what if he's a ghost? Do you think you can resist me? This person's voice seemed to be near and far, causing others to be unable to fathom it, and they were also unable to use this to determine his identity. Su Lingchong's expression froze. Even if the other party didn't reveal any imposing manner, merely from the fact that the other party was able to stand here without him being able to notice it, Su Lingchong was already able to discern that the other party's strength was far above his own, and the other party was utterly not someone he, Su Lingchong, could go against. When he saw Su Lingchong's terrified and vigilant expression, the other party suddenly started laughing, and his laughter carried obvious disdain and contempt. Only when he heard Su Lingchong become enraged did he say, "From now on, whether you want to be a human or a ghost, this is a problem that you have to consider, and not me." Every single word of these words were like a heavy drum that struck onto Su Lingchong's chest, causing him to be unable to breathe. At the same time, he felt terror and trembling from the depths of his soul. Who exactly are you? Su Lingchong forcefully gritted his teeth as he asked. This isn't a problem that you need to be concerned about. Now, throw away that thing in your hand. The masked man's tone caused others to be unable to refuse him. Su Lingchong's heart instantly trembled when he heard this. This was his most precious thing, and he was still thinking of quickly finding someone to take it back. How could he possibly throw it away like this? I'll count to 3. If you still don't throw it away, then prepare to become a ghost. Even though the masked man's voice was flat, it left no room for doubt. Su Lingchong's heart couldn't help but jerk when he felt the indistinct killing intent on the other party's body, but he was utterly unable to throw it away like this. 3. The masked man directly skipped 1 and 2, and along with his voice, Su Lingchong was terrified to the point of hurriedly wanting to let go. However, it was already too late. A piercing pain suddenly came from his hand, and he actually didn't know what sort of method he used to directly slice off a large piece of flesh, causing it to fall onto the ground along with the other half in his hand, and it was a tragic sight. Very good. If you didn't let go, then the one on the ground would be your entire palm now. Under Su Lingchong's terrified and painful gasp, the masked man smiled in an unfathomable manner. After that, he slowly walked to stand before Su Lingchong, and under Su Lingchong's incomparably shocked gaze, the masked man stomped on the other half of Su Lingchong's hand on the ground to the point it was unrecognizable, and it was forcefully crushed into minced meat. Su Lingchong's eyes almost split open as he watched this scene, and he clenched his teeth tightly as his entire body couldn't help but tremble. His eyes were completely red, and he had an insane expression as if he was prepared to risk everything and fight the masked man to the death. If he had the help of a medical expert earlier, there might still have been hope. But now, that other half of his hand had already become a ball of minced meat, and even a god would be unable to reattach it. At this moment, Su Lingchong was completely disheartened. When he saw the insanity on Su Lingchong's face become more and more intense, and his breathing became more and more coarse, the masked man remained unmoved, and he just stood there and looked coldly at Su Lingchong. After a long time, Su Lingchong finally calmed down once more. Even though the hatred in his eyes didn't reduce, at least he wouldn't madly want to fight the masked man to the death. The masked man couldn't help but laugh in surprise when he saw this. Being able to restrain yourself from making a move against me, this endurance isn't bad. Looks like you aren't a good-for-nothing idiot. Chapter 4004. What exactly is your intention in bringing me to this place? Su Lingchong suppressed the hatred in his heart and asked in a low voice. The masked man laughed lightly and said, "Nothing much, I just saw that you were pitiful, so I helped you." "Help me?" Su Lingchong couldn't bear to look straight at the pile of minced meat on the ground and said while gnashing his teeth, "Can this be considered as helping me?" "Of course, let me ask you a question. Do you like women more, or do you like power more?" The masked man said playfully. Su Lingchong was stunned for a moment before slowly replying, "Power." Although women were good things to cultivators who wholeheartedly pursued strength, compared to power and strength, they were really nothing. Especially to a person like Su Lingchong who was extremely ambitious. For so many years, he had always spared no effort in pursuing Shangwan Laner. Even if the factor of lust for women was within it, the more essential objective was still to borrow power to rise up. As long as he could successfully rise up, at that time, he would have as many peerless beauties as he wanted. Since you want power, then why do you have to rack your brains to keep this thing? The masked man laughed lightly in disdain and then said, "Compared to child's play like climbing up to women, it's far more reliable to strengthen one's own strength." What do you think? Su Lingchong was asked to the point of being speechless, and only after a long while did he faintly say, "Even if I want to increase my strength, there's no need to be a eunuch, right? What the fuck is the relationship between the two? Of course it's related." The masked man snapped his fingers and an ancient book suddenly appeared before Su Lingchong. The title page was engraved with 4 dark golden words, "Chrysanthemum Treasured Book." Su Lingchong's eyelids twitched, and he picked up the ancient book under the other party's indication. After he flipped it open, the first sentence that entered his eyes caused him to be shocked speechless. "If you want to cultivate this technique, you must first castrate yourself. This chrysanthemum treasured book is a supreme divine technique. After cultivating it to a profound level, its power is not the slightest bit inferior to the 5 divine techniques that are highly respected on the heavenly island, and it might even surpass them. However, there are 2 prerequisites to cultivating it. One is to first castrate yourself, and the second is to have bone-deep hatred. You have already fulfilled these 2 prerequisites," the masked man explained. This. Su Lingchong was instantly shaken. Regardless of whether he dared to face it or not, he had to accept the reality that he had already become a eunuch. In terms of hatred, his hatred towards Lin Yi and Shengwan Laner had absolutely broken through the horizon. With your aptitude and conditions, as long as you concentrate on cultivating the chrysanthemum treasured chrysanthemum, you will be able to reach within a few months. Only, you will be able. You. At that your strength, you will. When he heard this, Su Lingchong fell into deep contemplation. He was able to feel that these words weren't empty words without any basis, but up until now, he still knew nothing about the masked man before him. What was the identity of the masked man, what were his intentions, and why did he want him to cultivate the chrysanthemum treasured book? These were all questions, and the masked man didn't have any intention of explaining. After being silent for a long time, Su Lingchong suddenly fiercely gritted his teeth and said, "Now that things have come to this, I have no other choice. I want this chrysanthemum treasured book." "Very good, I didn't misjudge you. You are indeed a sensible fellow that knows how to adapt to circumstances. Then from today onwards, you will stay here and cultivate. I will only let you out after you've cultivated to the initial realm. As for the miscellaneous matters outside and at home, I will take care of them for you." The masked man spoke in admiration, then his figure flashed and vanished from Su Lingchong's line of sight, as if he had never appeared. Who exactly is this fellow that's pretending to be mysterious? Su Lingchong couldn't help but guess in his heart as he gazed at the completely empty chamber. This chamber, including the top and bottom, was completely impenetrable and impenetrable walls, and there was utterly no way out. Even with Su Lingchong's extraordinary eyesight, he was unable to find any gaps, and it was even to the extent that he felt a familiar defensive formation on the walls, and the level of the defensive formation was so high that it was astounding. Yet this masked person had actually vanished into thin air right before his eyes in a place like this. Even with Su Lingchong's experience, such cultivation and strength caused him to be unable to help but be flabbergasted and feel disbelief. Su Lingchong took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged right away before hugging the chrysanthemum treasured book and starting to study it. At any rate, regardless of whether he was willing or not, since the matter had developed to such an extent, if he didn't do as the masked man said and cultivate this chrysanthemum treasured book to the initial realm, then it would probably be difficult for him to see the light of day once more. To the unaware Lin Yi, Su Lingchong's strange encounter was equivalent to doing him a great favor in a disguised form. After all, Su Lingchong had just suffered a tremendous change, and it was the moment where it was the easiest for him to go to the extreme, and it was the moment where he posed the greatest threat to Lin Yi. Yet he was suddenly forcefully imprisoned by this masked man of unknown origins to cultivate the chrysanthemum treasured book. Not to mention what would happen in the future, at least in a short period of time. Su Lingchong was already unable to pose any threat to Lin Yi, and Lin Yi could concentrate on cultivating for a period of time. On the other hand, Lin Yi didn't intentionally find out where Su Lingchong had gone. Since there was no news of him, he was happy to be idle. Time flashed by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the day of the auction. According to the agreement, Lin Yi arrived at the Hong Merchant Group early in the morning to meet up with Hong Zhong. However, this time, he appeared in his original appearance. In any case, Hong Zhong already knew his identity, and the relationship between him and Hong Zhong had already been seen by everyone at the birthday banquet. Rather than hiding his identity as Lin Er, it was better for him to be a bit more aboveboard and directly appear in his original form. This was actually a kind of psychological game. After all, up until now, no matter how much Nan Tianba and the others suspected him, they at least didn't have enough evidence to confirm that he and Lin Er were the same person. Facing Lin Yi's original body, this trace of uncertainty could very likely become an opportunity. On the other hand, if it was Lin Er, the other party could instead confirm and directly make a move. After meeting up with Hong Zhong and exchanging greetings, Lin Yi immediately took out a bag from his bosom and handed it to Hong Zhong, saying, "Shopkeeper Hong, these are some pills that I refined not long ago. Can I pack them up and sell them to your Hong Merchant Group?" Hong Zhong's eyes lit up, and when he took a look at the cloth bag, he shockingly found that there were a total of 13 pills inside, all of which were Foundation Establishment Barrier Breaking pills. What made him even more surprised was that these Foundation Establishment Barrier Breaking pills were all flashing with a layer of pill halo. They were actually all rare top-grade goods. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.